Hello, everyone. Welcome to Go Live. What a special show we have for you, as always, but today is extra special because we got beautiful, beautiful gents and one man, incredible man, making his debut. Oh, that music stopped because I didn't record long enough, but probably got demonetized straight away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Go Live. We are going to have a wicked time. I can't wait to get to chat all things FTC with Asa. You can't avoid this one.
Yeah, no, you're going to throw me into that. I know it. I'm hot and shattered and almost didn't want to be here, but we've got a legendary guest. I can't believe that Gene Park is here. Cole, I'm sorry. I was like, you're a good guy too, but Gene Park, absolutely legend in the industry. Like, as interesting personalities go. Good. Looking forward to
it. Don't worry, Asa. This one I have hastily 5 minutes before the show broken down the topics in a way that we will get into and sink our teeth into, because it was a very busy week and there are some big industry-wide ramifications here, so we're gonna get into it. But before we do, Colt, did you miss me? It's been so long. It just feels like back to XNC again, seeing your sweet, sexy face. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing really, really well. I love Mag, my new co-host. Like, we're having such a great time, but I always miss my best friend Gaz, and it's good to be here with Asa. And this is such a great thing to be here with Gene Park. We're going to talk about the games. We're gonna cry. We're gonna hug. We're gonna laugh. It's gonna be so good because it's been the news has been juicy. Let's do it.
Yeah,
I did not have the emotional register for most of those things that you just said, but I will be here.
It will be fun this time, I swear.
Yeah, it will be. FTC chat's going to be lit. That's going to be mad.
I'm glad to hear that Asa is not like you're dragging Asa into this, because it's like this is definitely one topic where I was like, I don't want to pay attention to, but of course I was. So, you know. But hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is the Gene Park in the house. Alvin with the $5 super chat says, Gene, thank you for everything that you do. Gene,
you're welcome.
Thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for coming on to Go Live. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I've been a long time admirer of all three of you gentlemen. As I was saying earlier, the console wars are dumb, but you guys make it so much fun. That's it.
That's what we're here for. Yeah. That's what we're here for. And today we're going to baptize you in the sauce. You're going to be part of it. So shut down your Twitter, because I'm going to throw you straight into the deep end. But no,
Twitter's shut down anyways. So
yeah, by the end of the show, he's going to say the console wars are so fun and we're so dumb. That's what we're hoping for.
Well, that's true.
Also accurate. Also true. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to 200 people already in chat. Smash the like button. We're going to get into it. Hoggy, I see you. We're going to get saucy up in here. Before we do, we always do this, and Colt knows this. Anytime we have a new guest, we have to get a little bit of history behind the debut of the new gent. So, Gene Park, briefly, if you could explain yourself in a few words, your legacy in the gaming space. Tell everyone, who the hell are you?
Yeah, my legacy in the gaming space is actually, well, professionally pretty short. A lot of people think that I've been covering games for a long time, but it's only really been at the end of 2019. I covered like Spider-Man, you know, like that was like one of my first articles.
Okay.
But I've been gaming for about 5 years now. I'm kidding. I've been gaming all my life. Way back when my first video game was Karateka on the PC, and then Atari, and then Nintendo, and then all that afterwards. I freelanced for a small gaming critic website, GameCritics.com, in the 90s and early 2000s while I was in college. I'm originally from Guam, the tiny island from Guam. I haven't been there in like 15 years.
Okay.
And then I was a news reporter there, and I covered crime, education, government, all that stuff. And then I moved to Hawaii, where I covered, again, crime, small business, all that stuff. So throughout all my journalism career, it's just been regular basic news. just working for a regular local newspapers, like the Orange County Register in California, San Gabriel Valley Tribune in California, the Honolulu Star Advertiser in Hawaii. And then I worked for, I did PR for a little bit, which was fun but interesting, and not really my speed, but it was definitely some, like, I wanted to move out of Hawaii. So
why?
Because
That's a dream place.
It is. I actually miss it a lot. But career-wise, it sucks. Like, there's not a lot of good pay. There's not a lot of good jobs. So I really wanted to like break out. I wanted to move back to California, and I figured journalism wasn't really doing it. So that's why I jumped into PR, and I started my own like social media consulting firm. Because I don't know if people know, but I'm like a social media professional. Like I've advised other companies.
Oh really?
Yeah, and that's the reason why I got hired at the Washington Post, where I work now. They hired me as a social media editor. And that's what I did when I got hired in 2015. I covered like the presidential election in 2016. I covered, just.
Are you going to be okay to talk about video games with little people like us? Because you've got some insane pedigree. I feel like there's going to be me with my auto-tune talking absolute dog shit, and I'm like, what have I done?
Well, here's the thing. I'm really, really tired of covering like regular news. I did that for 20 years. So like for me, being able to cover video games is just like I paid my dues, man. Let me just talk about video games, like the thing that I actually like. So in 2019, the Washington Post was thinking about starting a video game vertical, and because I was like the audience editor, the expert, I was advising them on what to do. And they initially wanted to only cover esports, and I was like, no. No one's going to read your esports articles. I'm sorry, that's just not how like the information economy in esports works. That's just look at what ESPN did. They just shuttered their whole esports section down, right? So I was like, no. We need to cover video games at large, like the whole thing. And then after that, they were like, well, we need to hire a reporter. And I was like, well, why not Gene? Because he seems to know a lot of this stuff. And I was like, okay. And that's it. So I'm going to be covering games since like 2020, really. And really at the beginning of the pandemic.
Which is probably a crazy time to join, because that traffic must have seen a massive upshot.
It was good traffic, COVID. But it also sucked because it stopped me from traveling. It stopped me from like meeting people in person. I went to DICE shortly before the pandemic happened, and that was like great. I got to meet a whole bunch of people. I met Ed Boon, the creator of Mortal Kombat. I saw Phil Spencer from across the bar, and like he told me that he was too shy to say hi to me, and I was like too shy to say hi to him. So
yeah, he's a humble guy.
Yeah. But and then like it just stopped my ability to like network, so that's why I just use my social media know-how to like just try to spread that around. And even before then, I was like I grew a lot of my following through tweeting about politics, and then I just got tired of talking about politics and reading about politics, and it's like I really actually would rather talk about games. So
people are even more toxic.
Exactly. I'm not sure which is more toxic, to be quite honest. I do not know. I couldn't tell you.
Sometimes I can't differentiate the two.
Yes, sometimes one is better than the other, And yeah, sometimes you can't differentiate. And then, so that's why, like, even before I started covering games, I started talking about games more. I wanted to be like the guy who knows about video games at the Washington Post, and that's how I started to kind of build my following, and it helped when I actually became a reporter for the Washington Post. And then
I love that you had this massive political following. You're like, have Zelda.
And then they laid off my whole team earlier this year for stupid reasons.
Damn.
Yeah, but they decided to keep me, so I am now the only person at Washington.
You're the lone person at WP doing games?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I remember those tweets when Gene was talking about how uncertain it was, as tons of people were losing their jobs across the industries and across his company. Mm-hmm. And then seeing those tweets like, so far I'm spared, and all that you've gone through over the past couple of years as well.
That's right.
You're hanging on by like a pinky nail, like, come on.
Yeah, well, I literally was. A side note, I had cancer. So
that's how I got to know you, Gene.
Yeah.
I knew of you, then it's through your struggles with cancer and defeating it. It's when I really started following you, because I mean, I'll be honest with you, to this day, some of your tweets are an eye-opener. If anyone in this panel I think, dare I say, has an appreciation for life. It's most likely you who has the most appreciation, because going through what you did and reading some of your tweets, and don't want to be emotional about it. I'll switch the camera off if I start getting a little bit teary-eyed. But one of the things you said is, "Hey man, I really want to live," and that fucked me up. And since then I've loved you, and then just watching it carefully, because you see it on social and you're a bit numb to it. Like, I don't know this person, I hope the best for him, but with you it was just like that. I want to live. And it's so good because we've watched it as a community. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. I have an acute appreciation for living now, and I am seeing cancer spam to debuff Gene, to nerf Gene because I beat cancer, right?
Debuff Gene.
Nerf.
Yeah. No, you can't be nerfed, man. You are. You are the
Gene was too OP for cancer, so.
You buffed us all up. That sounds a bit weird, but you did with your positivity, man. You're one of the nicest people in this space, so it's really good to actually see you defeat. It's just here after all of that.
Yeah,
to have you on here. I didn't think you're going to be on here, man. Like, after all of that, like, you may have not thought you're going to be on it, but here you are. Well done, man.
I made it to Go Daily. I'm happy to be here. That's fine, you know?
This is it. It doesn't get any better. So welcome. Like, just enjoy the come down after this. No, man. But honestly, thank you, both Jeds, all of you guys and guests. Just a little bit of positivity before we get into the absolute dog shit. That is the movie, that is the game called Final Fantasy 16. Gene Park told me in private he hates this game. No, I'm just kidding. Final Fantasy 16. Your review was the first I read. Then I watched ACG's review. And those two are the only two reviews I've seen for this game.
Yeah. And
they're really good reviews. And I've gone in to play it. And I kind of want to pick your brains a little bit on Final Fantasy 16, because I've been playing it a little bit now. I'm level 26 or something. Got my third set of Elkin powers. And I was trolling a bit on social media saying, is this a game or is it a movie? But having played it a little more, Final Fantasy 16 is a strange one. Because this game, am I remiss in suggesting, Gene Park, that this game puts gameplay on a back burner and prioritizes its more story-based affairs over gameplay? Because the RPG elements and gameplay, they're taking a back seat as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I don't think... Yeah, well, you tell me.
You might want to watch Skillup's review, because he also said pretty much the same thing too, and he got like so much hate for it, like through this week still. Okay. Ridiculous. Yeah. And like, I thought he was being pretty reasonable. He's not asking for the game, for Final Fantasy, to become like turn-based and like completely go backwards. But as IGN's take yesterday said, or the other day said, even God of War Ragnarok has more RPG elements than Final Fantasy 16. To your point about cutscenes, I didn't mind them so much. Because Final Fantasy has always been so much about cutscenes. Even Japanese RPGs. I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 right now, and so much of that game is cutscenes too, and I love it. I think the issue that some people might have, including SkillUp too, was that it doesn't really marry presentation and cutscene presentation with gameplay too much. Like, there's a lot of shifting back and forth, right? Like media in res or whatever, where it's like, you see the cutscene fight and you're pressing square every once in a while, and then boom, you're back into the fight, right? But there's no like actual play session where things are happening around you. Like, they kind of do that at the beginning, where you see the Titans in the background like fighting, but that's like the most it becomes. Whereas, like, with God of War Ragnarok, and I like Final Fantasy 16 more than God of War Ragnarok, but God of War Ragnarok does presentation and the way it molds the story into gameplay better. And also, I do think the God of War Ragnarok story is just better overall.
Okay.
But I like the combat of Final Fantasy 16 better, because I'm such a huge Devil May Cry fan. And I think that's kind of a key thing. Like, if you really, really like what Devil May Cry, what Platinum Games have done, Bayonetta have done, then I think you're really, really going to love Final Fantasy 16 and what it does.
Yes, I did like Devil May Cry, but the combat in this to me is so basic. Like you have one set of like square combos, square, then you have the R2, and then you cycle through the Alchem powers, and you can double jump and then maybe slash down, maybe thrust forward. But there's no base combat variety. You know, you hold square, then you hold it, pause a bit, then you hit square again. There's none of it, and the combat just doesn't feel impactful enough. It feels like this game feels like to me. Well, one of your tweets, you said it can't be overstated that Final Fantasy 16 is straight up a really long Devil May Cry game. Devil May Clive, you said.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's like a substandard Devil May Cry game, but I cannot stop playing it or watching it because
watching it.
I say that it almost like, you know, it seems like I'm taking the piss out of it or don't play it, but this game reminds me of Final Fantasy Advent Children and Final Fantasy Spirit Within, which are the two movies. And it might seem like a negative, but I feel like I understand what Yoshi P is doing because it takes the best cinematically. By the way, the reason why the story is so good is because cinematically, what they have done here is incredible. The scale of the battles, the huge battles, are insane. Even the story, like the beats, are really good, and I'm really in tune in this Final Fantasy more than any other Final Fantasy after Final Fantasy VIII. And part of me is thinking this is a formula they should go adopt going forward. But another part of me is saying, well, with refinements with the combat, because I think that there's a definite massive ceiling for improvement there. But the other part of me is kind of sad that the game has forsaken its RPG leanings. This is not this is basic as fuck RPG, man.
I like when you say basic because that is a criticism I also apply to the story, and you know, like you're not far in the story, and a lot of people are still getting my way through the story and getting their way through the story, and people are mad at me because I say, well, I think the story was kind of fell short, and it's mostly because it's the final third, you know. And
the final third is where it fell short for you?
It is. And it's mostly because when you see the actual scope of like the themes and like what they're trying to do with the story and like the epicness of it all, it's actually pretty small and it's actually very, very basic. There's the game isn't saying a lot of complex things. It just be like, if you played other JRPGs before, you get to the end, you're like, okay, well, this is another one. That's what it is.
It's funny you say that because actually in your review you said the story needs more. Yoshi P, which you also cited in your review, said this generally about Final Fantasy. Because personally, I would say that the past stories weren't particularly hard to understand, but obviously I do recognize that they have certain reputation for lots of convoluted esoteric terminology. It's a bit of a meme online. But with this game, he said, Final Fantasy 16 has its own unique terminology, but what we've tried to do in the early stages of development was make sure that they can be easily comparable to real life stuff. So they've done mother crystals as oil fields, ether is oil, and so the base story isn't that hard to understand because it's quite simple. So I do understand that, but one thing I really think they should carry forward, which I love that they've done in this game, is the summons. They've embraced the whole. For me, Final Fantasy was all about summons. For me, getting Ifrit in that cave near Balam Gardens in Final Fantasy, or the electric Quetzalcoatl, whatever the freaking weird name that was. Remember Quetzalcoatl? How do you pronounce it? Quetzalcoatl? That weird bird with no face. Yeah. We had Shiva, or what was it? The Ice Woman. I still remember the animations. And then they've embraced it so well with this whole dominant thing. And I think that's such a good idea that they should carry that forward as a staple. But I feel like basically on my early playthrough, I think the reviews have been very generous for this at the same time. I think
people are a little bit hyperbolic about the game. It's not like, and it's a little bit like, it reminds me, it's interesting because like we were at the same place that we were last year, where it was like Elden Ring versus God of War Ragnarok, and now it's like Zelda versus Final Fantasy 16. And Zelda is the Elden Ring in this regard, a very open-ended game, and Final Fantasy 16 is a very story-driven game. And I think people are really, really. I'm not like the biggest fan of like if people want to understand how I review games, story is not the most important thing for me. The story could be absolute fucking shit.
Yeah.
But if the gameplay is great, then I love the game. It doesn't matter. So that's why I ended up loving Final Fantasy 16, because I'm not even calling Final Fantasy 16 story shit. I'm just saying that it just really didn't do anything like new for me, because I played games like Nier Automata. I played games like Xenoblade Chronicles, you know, and those games have much better stories, you know. So that's why, like, for me, God of War Ragnarok had a great story, but like the gameplay was a little bit dull for me. And with Final Fantasy 16, like, I love the story, but it's not that great, but I love the gameplay. So like for me, I enjoyed it very much.
You see quite kind of opposite to me, because you do enjoy the gameplay. For me, the gameplay is, some of it, frankly, Gene, is that's a bit of a piss take.
Some of it is boring. Some of it is very boring.
Some of it is fucking stupid.
You're not even at the boring parts yet, guys. You're not even at the boring parts yet. You're 26 hours in. Yeah, you're still at the quote unquote good parts.
Okay.
As I mentioned in my review, there are main quests that have side quest energy, and you're like, why am I doing this? Like,
I was going to say that there was one main quest that I do where I had to find someone who worked at a brothel, and I was just like, talk to people, turn around, the people are there, so I'm just pressing forward, press X. I'm like, the fuck is this? This is basic gameplay.
Yes,
and I barely qualify it. It's an interactive movie.
I think it speaks to the team's like experience, because this is the team that made FF14, and then you can see that you know they know how to make MMO quests, so they put MMO quests in here. You know, like God of War Ragnarok had like way better quests, like side quests, like tell you a story.
God of War Ragnarok, all forgiven with the side quests.
Yeah,
that's a great point. They have better quests easily.
Yeah. Witcher 3, this game is obviously like people remind you of, like obviously Witcher 3 had like amazing side quests, and
that's not even comparable.
And it's like, how many times is FF16 gonna tell you like, oh, this slave is going through some shit, you know? That's
the whole theme of this whole thing, which is a cool theme, but it just really, there's one bit that I've just done is go up. You're supposed to go up to the top of the hill, and you just see a group of slaves being mistreated, and you could just see like generic dialogue. I'm gonna hear them talk some generic stuff, and the generic stuff really trying very transparently to make you feel things, and it's not done with any real tact. But there's this weird dichotomy with this story where there's some bits that you're still pulled in, the other bits it's very basic. I'm not sold on the dialogue, the accents as well. I don't.
What are they? I was trying to.
Some of it's Cockney, some of it's a bit posh. It's like, you what, mate? You trying to get to a brothel? Fuck off.
No. It's not even that strong. Like, it's really watered down to me, and thanks to like this show and other people I've met through the community being on YouTube and stuff. Like, I've heard so many different types of English accents, and I feel like when I was playing the demo, like I'm like, what is this accent? It sounds like a watered down American British thing, or am I way off the mark?
Yeah,
because it's not very strong.
Yeah, nobody in this game says you what. Nobody says that. Nobody says you what.
There's actually an NPC where I kind of shared one where they told me to fuck off, and he was they were a bit. Most of it's posh, but then you meet the gods, and let me just quickly in my head. You just play it right here. I don't know if you. Yeah, I'll share it in the chat, but yeah, mate. Gene, you missed this part clearly, which is part of the main quest, because it's like, do you think this looks like a brothel? Fuck off. That's exactly what he says. I'll link it in chat, but I don't know if it'll come through. But there is a bit of a weird one. Colt, you asked me a few times, Gaz, because you've rinsed through your games. Should I buy this game? I don't think you'll enjoy it, man. I like it, but I don't. Well, I like bits of it, but I don't think you'll enjoy it, Colt. You like your gameplay. This game doesn't really have good gameplay.
A third of the game is cutscenes. Absolutely.
A third of the game.
I mean, like Skilla was saying, like 75% of it, which I think I can see that too. But like definitely, like it has 11 hours of cutscenes. I beat it in 35 hours. So like a third of the time, I was mostly watching. It's a lot of discussions. It's a lot of dialogue, like you said, Gaz, right? Even with the side quests, like people are just kind of saying the same things over and over again to each other. So it's like, okay, can we just get like, so you just end up skipping the dialogue because it's like, okay, I already know. Like, just tell me where to go. Just tell me where to go.
Yeah.
You know?
I found that as well. Like I'm skipping the dialogue, but really you're skipping the gameplay because that's a big chunk of it. So
that's a lot of the gameplay. Yeah, it's either that or fighting. You know, that's it.
Yeah, and the fighting is not grabbing me at all. It's hardly challenging. I think I only died once in that game.
It's not challenging. That's definitely another critique.
Yeah.
Even people who don't usually play these games are like, yeah, it's pretty easy. And like I think they made it by design because they want Final Fantasies to sell 10 million copies. So they made it easier. They make an easier version of the game where you can equip the rings, the assist rings, and you can just fly through the game just by literally pressing the one button, right?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of movies, you know. And then they dress it up in Game of Thrones at the beginning, but as I mentioned in my review, like the Game of Thrones stuff is just set dressing because it becomes super Final Fantasy, like towards like.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it does, and I liked it better. My issue was, you know, like people were getting at me because they think that I'm the one who said that. Final Fantasy 16 is like Kingdom Hearts. No, I didn't even say that. And secondly,
wasn't it Hogue Law?
It was Hogue Law. It was Hogue Law that said that, you know. And if anything, my personal wish is I wish it was more like Kingdom Hearts. I wish they went batshit insane towards the end of it, and they went really crazy with the story, but they really kind of didn't. So.
Yeah, and C Triggers with the $2 super chat goes, it's legally distinct Game of Thrones. Yeah, at the start, definitely.
At the start.
Yeah,
because you have all these old men like, ooh, the rubber, you know, they're saying, oh, I'm saying politics stuff, but then you realize towards the end of the game, none of that shit mattered. You didn't have to pay attention to any of that shit at all. You don't have to pay attention to any of that because it really, really doesn't matter because what really matters is the Final Fantasy part at the end of it, you know?
Okay.
That's it.
So it was kind of good to know. At the same time, I was singing the game's praises for that feature. You hold down the middle.
It's great.
Button
I love it.
And tells you the story background. That's really good. But
I love it. But then I said this in another podcast. I said that this is the Final Fantasy game that needed that the least because this game's story is actually pretty easy to follow, and it gets even simpler towards the end. I love the feature. It was actually helpful sometimes, you know, because it's like, oh, you know, I do a little bit of background. It's nice to have like a wiki of immediately.
That's
available.
what it is, a Wikipedia, live Wikipedia, context sensitive Wikipedia. At one point, I was like Clive and that Jill. I'm like, they are oddly touchy feely for brother and sister. Then I found out they're not brother and sister. I'm like, okay. This is fine. You can tell each other
adopted siblings or whatever like that. So you know, like it's the step sibling fantasy, I guess. That's the Final Fantasy. You know?
It is. I love, man. The romances is everything for me. Final Fantasy VIII with the Squall and Renoa. Hey, Cole, are you having a peptic ulcer or you're taking a shit? Your face is
no, just that. What you guys are talking about, like. Gosh,
no, they're not brother and sister. Don't worry,
they're not. It's not my blood. Yeah, we're not like that. Yeah, the Final Fantasy 16 isn't like that streamer who was like, what's actually the issue with incest? Did you guys see that streamer?
No.
Oh my gosh, here we go. No.
Yeah,
what?
Blouse something. I don't know, but he was like actually arguing on stream, like, what is the actual the issue with incest though? If you use protection. And you're not gonna get your sister pregnant, then what is the issue there? What is the actual issue other than like it's disgusting? Don't tell me it's disgusting. You know, I was like, what the fuck,
well, he slept with his sister.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't stop the game selling loads. It sold quite well, 3 million copies at launch. Yeah, which is compared to the 5 million, which the Final Fantasy 15 sold, but that was on loads of platforms. PC and Xbox. In Japan, it's the best ever PS5 game sold. It outdid Elden Ring. In the UK, the box sales were 74% lower, but then that doesn't tell the whole story because of digital, as we know, and now Christopher Dring also knows. So Final Fantasy 16 is doing well, and I'm just watching it. We're keeping a keen eye on it because I feel like even though I've several hours in and I really want Asa you to play this game, or watch this game. I want you to sample this game because I am genuinely intrigued about what you think about this. Because
like I've actually played the other Final Fantasy games, right?
Exactly. And
so
completed them.
I am definitely going to play it, but I am probably going to wait for the PC release just to lock those performance issues on the head. I know Gene enjoys a 30 frames per second game. He said many times, and that's like fair enough. For me, I can wait, and it's a single player game. So, but it's not gonna like the story isn't going to diminish in the course of a year or anything like that. So I may as well wait. It'll be cheaper and run better.
Yeah, it probably will. I don't think I will say Final Fantasy's performance issues didn't bother me, apart from the almost 10 frames.
I will also say though, if they release Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and that runs at like 12 frames per second, I'll get that one straight away, because that one I'm a little bit on the fence on 16 because I hear all of these mixed things. I didn't enjoy 15. I don't trust Square Enix to deliver good Final Fantasy games, so it's not like a must play straight away for me. 7 Rebirth is a must play because 7 Remake, I adored that, loved it. 16, I'm like, I want to hear the music, but I can wait.
Music is good.
The music is 10/10, obviously. Like they're like, if there's anything you can't say anything wrong about, it's the music. It's amazing.
The music is mad. Like even some of the open world, some of the games, even the open world is so superficial. Like the illusion is there, but the music just hits there, and it's just like that's nice. Face 23, Brooklyn, New York. Thank you for the $20 super chat. Goes, Final Fantasy VII Remake and most likely Rebirth will have a good balance for people who prefer action or turn-based with a lot of RPG elements. I think he's right there and I haven't played 7 Remake yet. I'm going to play it after I complete this game because I'd be interested
to see how you feel about 7 Remake after this.
Yeah, I think, so there are bits of it I actually will miss about this game, which is the story and just the summon element of it. I really, really like the summon, it's like, what's that anime where you had these they're like the dominants. Anyway, I'll digress, but I will play that. Face, thank you for that super chat, and I will actually play 7 Remake after this one. But it's an interesting one. I think I expected, and I'm surprised, I expected a lot of pushback from the community where they were saying you've completely relegated gameplay for spectacle, and I'm not seeing that. And a lot of people are saying, oh guys, what about Hellblade? I'm telling you now, Hellblade's gameplay, even the first one, compared to this, like it still had more. Even though the gameplay elements were not exactly great in that game, I feel like it didn't relegate them, or they fused them with the cinematic parts way more naturally than this one. But there was never a moment where a cutscene ends, press X, or even this dumb bit. I hate this mechanic in games now. Hold R2 to open a door. It's like that. It barely qualifies as gameplay.
I don't understand why every developer seems to insist on like, oh, hold this to pick it up. I'm like, no, I just want to fucking pick it up.
Yeah. Like what I mean, every door you have to hold
specifically on Final Fantasy, does it play on the haptics? Is it trying to do something through that trigger, or is it just a pointless delay?
It's a pointless delay.
Hiding a loading. It's hiding it's hiding the geometry and the textures popping in on the other side of the door. Same thing Hogwarts Legacy did. If you're holding holding a button and how long does it take you to open the door? You have to fill the circle.
But it's redundant. So Jeeves in the chat goes, holding a button is too much to ask. I'm like, it's not the incredible task of holding it. It's the redundancy of that kind of element in games. And to square to open the gate, it's like you're running out of ways to engross us. So you have this base mechanic. It's in loads of games. Loads of games do it. It's not just a Final Fantasy problem. But in a game like Final Fantasy 16, where gameplay is so sparse, meaningful gameplay is so sparse, that addition just hits it home. It's more apparent. It's just weird. It's just lame. But what can we do? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all the gaming talk, because we're going to go into the FTC. Let's listen. This part gets juicy. I know, Asa, you're a bit of a skeptic on this, but we have a lot of source to get into. And I've got several topics here because these are big topics normally, but now we'll have to power through them. We got some incredible disclosure here. This FTC case, for the people who don't know, Microsoft and FTC have been battling it out in court. This decision here, so we found out, Bobby Kotick confirmed, if the FTC successfully gets its injunction, the deal is dead. And we'll find out this coming week, I believe. We'll find out whether or not the ABK deal will go through. It's a big thing for him to confirm. It's that the deal will die if the injunction is granted. And we got some incredible disclosure here. And one of them was an email from Matt Boutte to Tim Stewart in 2019. And a lot of people really got pissed off with this. And Asa, I'll lead you to this. Microsoft apparently is ready to spend Sony out of business. And I don't know, I want to get your view on it. Is Microsoft evil? What is wrong with this strategy? We saw Colin Moriarty shedding tears about this brute force. Microsoft brute forcing its way into the industry, which I think is bullshit. But, well, either maybe doing that, but look at the industry. But I'll lead to you. Matt Booty says, a different view to the general view might be that Microsoft, we are in a unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. I think that the game's content matters. I think that video game content matters in 10 years. He said this in 2019. We might look back and say totally, it would have been worth losing $3 billion in 2020 to avoid where Tencent, Google, Amazon, or even Sony would become the Disney of games. And it goes on for a while. And he also said, if we reverse course on day and date, it's going to be hard to convince folks that things like Mixer or xCloud have much of a chance of surviving scrutiny either. I just want to get your view on it. Generally, Microsoft brute forcing its way. Should we scowl at them?
100% believe in Mixer. Is that what you want from me? No, there's still lots of things in these emails, right? This isn't even the most interesting ones from the whole thing. You're right. I'm not a skeptic of it. I'm kind of just not that interested in the court proceedings. But there has been a lot of behind the scenes looks, poorly redacted emails, things like that. I've learned to ignore everything that they say publicly. Now, the only source of truth is internal emails, so you can see what they're really thinking and what they're really doing. And there have been some things there, some significant discrepancies. This particular one from Matt Booty, I mean, he, even as an internal email, he's posturing, like he's not even necessarily putting that forward as his opinion. He's saying, like, you could look at it like this. This is something to consider. It's fair to say that Microsoft brute forced their way into the industry. And it's fair to say that if anybody wants to get into the gaming industry, like in the console space, they are going to equally need to brute force their way in. Because there are huge barriers to entry and there's no other way around them. So, like, if Apple wanted a piece of it, they'd brute force their way in with a whole load of money. There's just no other way to do it. So, yeah.
I know. That's a general setup. The reason why I put that there first and got that out of the way is because I want to get the gents' views on it. I know Colt's view, but leading to you, Colt, before I go to Gene. You saw Colin Moriarty crying about consolidation again, brute forcing it through, and it's just like they're orders of magnitude just inferior to PlayStation, yet they have to buy their way in. And I'm thinking, what other incredible way do you have to propose for Microsoft to actually get into this space when it did so a whole generation and a bit later than Sony? What's your take on it? Is Microsoft evil for brute forcing it? Is it doing the wrong thing?
I mean, the reason why Colin thinks it's okay for PlayStation is because they're the more popular platform and they've been around longer than Microsoft and Xbox. They've been around longer than Xbox. And really the fact of it is Xbox and PlayStation are nearly identical right now before ABK is acquired, because PlayStation has 20 some studios and 6 of them they built from the ground up. The rest they have money had it and bought and acquired. Xbox is basically in the same situation. They just did it over the past 5 years instead of over 25 years. So it looks really aggressive, but I have to remind people, and I'd love to remind Colin, that Xbox was comprised only of a Gears, Forza, and Halo studio. That's all they had. They had a dying Fable studio. They really just didn't have any first-party content. And PlayStation had bought Naughty Dog and these other studios, and they were making great games. But also, Xbox's first party outings are their best content that they actually have. Their third party stuff is terrible. And if you look at the numbers, especially over the past few years, Xbox and PlayStation's first party outings are rated almost identical across the board. PlayStation will have a stinker, Xbox will have a stinker, and then the other ones are great.
You mean the average scoring? Yeah.
The average aggregate Metacritic or OpenCritic score across the platform from their first-party studios is right up there in like the mid-80s out of 100. And so when Colin says, why would you cheer on a corporation that is throwing all this money into something that they're bad at, I think he's completely wrong. Now, Xbox is bad about managing a major studio like 343. And what's another one that they're having a problem with?
Initiative, Undead Labs.
The Initiative, yes, thank you. The Initiative and 343 are horribly managed. And he's right. Like, those are big mistakes. But the rest of their studios, because the perception is key when it comes to Xbox. The perception on the outside is Xbox sucks. They'll never make it. Their games aren't very good. Nobody buys them. They can't sell consoles. But when you take a step back and go, Rare is a shell of their former selves, but Rare's Sea of Thieves is far more lucrative and popular, and it's bigger than anything they've ever put out in the early 2000s or late 90s. So that perception is so skewed for Xbox, and I get it. I'm not here to tell people they can't have that perception, because it's really easy to look at Xbox and say, you know what, they just don't get it, because they do make a lot of mistakes. But when you look back and Xbox is making a lot of money for Microsoft, regardless of that perception, Colin's dead wrong. Now it's time for Xbox to have some funding, which they haven't had. Let me finish my speech and I'm done.
No, that's good.
They haven't had any funding for probably the past 12 years up until the last couple of years. Terry Myerson wanted him to just fizzle out. He wanted him to dry out and just die on the vine and just naturally go away and not be a problem and be a responsibility for Microsoft. And Phil Spencer really wanted to prove that there was money to be made. And while he was doing this, going out on a limb and looking like he was crazy, gaming was becoming the most profitable and surpassing TV and movie in revenue and entertainment value. And now it is massive. And now Phil Spencer is like dumping all this money into an industry that is actually fiery hot. Yeah. And when you're a massive PlayStation fan, or as a PlayStation only fan, where that's the only place you want to play or where you want to cheer, it can be difficult to see the underdog come up with a lot of funding and get that support that PlayStation's had all along. Here's the last thing I'll say. Up until this ABK deal, I would love to know who has spent more money on first party in the past 20 years. Before the $70 billion deal, because ABK is mostly made to just make more money for Xbox. All those games are going to remain status quo. I think for the most part, almost all of them. So up in the past 20 years, because this deal isn't approved for ABK, who has spent more money for exclusivity, first-party content, exclusive content, money-hatted games, paying to keep games off of Xbox? Who has spent more money? I don't know the answer, and that's where I would love to see Gene take it from there.
Yeah, I wish I had the answer.
I think
that's a good question, though. Yeah.
But we do know part of the poorly redacted documents how much Horizon's budget was. And The Last of Us Part 2, 220 million and 212 million. One of I mean, that's very, very high for these games that were 5 years in development. So they do spend quite a bit on their first party. But I do agree with Colt. And Acer, Gene, you have to brute force your way in to spend to do so. This massive consolidation word is seen so negatively. Yeah, I feel like the industry needs a shock. If Activision, of all places, Activision hasn't been seen as a bastion of great running with Bobby Kotick at the helm, with studios that it has shuttered multitudes of studios, what it did with games that it completely let die. Like was it Tony Hawk? Guitar Hero, they just churned it out. COD seems to be the one that still withstands all of that churn. Look at what happened with Blizzard. We haven't seen StarCraft anywhere. Like Phil Spencer talks about making COD biannual or not making it annual, so there's a positive there. It's going to be on Game Pass. That's great. What about World of Warcraft? All these dormant IPs. I just find it weird that you'd balk at this idea that this player can make this move, and it's just seen, you just attach these like words to it. Brute force, it's bad, it's negative. Yeah, when it comes down to the detail of it, PlayStation has also done the same. It's been quite ruthless during its premiership, and it had a whole generation that Microsoft didn't have. People downplay the generational advantage that PlayStation had at a time where Microsoft wasn't even in there. That was a pivotal moment for it to pave the relationships where it can essentially foreclose Microsoft out of these timed exclusives in Japan and RPGs. It just feels like disingenuous to me to argue. Yes, I'm sure there's a valid point to be made about buying it as opposed to nurturing it. But I don't see Sony breastfeeding all of its studios and building these studios and like doing all of this. I don't see it. I just don't.
That's the kind of commentary I'm here for sure.
You have to remember, PlayStation
latch onto my nipples
sucking out Jim Ryan's teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we have to constantly remind people that Xbox or PlayStation are not actually making these games. And when you say like they breastfeed them, it's so hilarious because when Sony Santa Monica makes a masterpiece, which they do, it wasn't PlayStation, it was Sony Santa Monica. And of course, PlayStation is funding them the money, and you can give money, but money does not make an incredible game. It is talent, it's soul, it's heart, it's hard work, it's access to great software and hardware. Like, it's a whole culmination. And people who think that PlayStation breastfeeds their studios and makes greatness, they've built a great suite of studio families, and that's what Xbox is doing right now. It's just unfortunate they've had to do it all in 25% of the time.
Yeah. So what? That's what they needed to do. Like, you complain about
wanted them to compete. Like, exactly, you wanted them to stand up and make some games, right, Gaz?
They finally do it. They finally do it. And they just have a bitch fit while simultaneously saying they haven't been doing it. I just don't. What do you want?
I'm just going to remind you that PlayStation has bought 70 to 75% of their studios over the course of 25 years. Xbox just did it in 5 years, and it looks super evil.
Yeah, it doesn't even look evil to me, but I don't know. What do you think, Gene? What's your view generally on consolidation and the way Microsoft is doing it?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think, first of all, I keep thinking about what Booty said about becoming the Disney of video games, right? What does that actually mean? And I think the way I see it is that there could be two meanings. One, becoming the Disney of video games is mirroring the strategy Disney did in recent years as well, which is acquiring Marvel, acquiring Fox, and that's why they have the fucking Simpsons on Disney Plus. That's why they have, Spider-Man and everything like that, right?
Yeah.
Disney didn't nurture Spider-Man at all.
Not at all.
It was nurtured in the 60s with Stan Lee. That Stan Lee was the breastfeeder. Oh, we can just move off it.
That's a good analogy. We just stick with that. Breastfeeder.
Yeah, I like it.
It was nurtured throughout decades with Marvel Comics, with the Sam Raimi movies, with Sony, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other side, which is the Disney, which is again, Disney has their own IP that they've nurtured too. Lion King remake, for some reason, is the most, the highest, the grossing animated movie of all time. They wouldn't happen if they didn't establish the Lion King IP in the 90s, right? If you want to talk about
the remake is the highest, what?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the Mario movie is just like it's just kind of below it now, I think.
Wow.
It's a fucking awful movie, these awful movies. I'm sure The Little Mermaid is doing great too, but they
Avatar, by the way, too. Avatar 2 sucked. I don't know why there's no justice.
I kind of want to see Avatar 2, but
Yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's basically Avatar 1 but water. That's all I'm saying. That's all it is.
Yeah.
The only thing is missed that wonder when you first see the first Avatar is like, oh wow,
That was
But
amazing.
We missed.
full
Well,
time.
that's already been happened. So yeah, go see it, Gene.
Sorry, so go ahead,
Yeah,
James.
ADHD if you want to think about the
podcast.
Disney and video games in terms of how companies are nurturing it, it's really on Nintendo. And it's interesting that you guys talk about, like, PlayStation is PlayStation. There's no PlayStation made game, right? But there are Nintendo made games,
Yeah.
and Nintendo has been able to nurture and nourish their IP, and that's why the Super Mario Brothers movie just comes out and it just makes $1 billion, literally, because everyone knows Mario and everyone knows that character. Sony, to Colt's point, Sony tried to do this with studios earlier, which is why they did that with Naughty Dog. So that's why they've had that runway, and that's why it does seem shocking, I guess, to people to see Microsoft just doing it and finally being able to do it within the last 5 years, as opposed to Sony doing it for 12 years. So that's where this idea of brute forcing comes from, and I agree with Asa that you can't really. You look at what the rest of Booty's email said. He says, look at Google, look at Amazon, and Jeff Bezos is my boss, right? And Amazon fucking sucks at making games right now,
Yeah, they're not even trying.
Amazon isn't able to nourish it, and it's because nourishing and nurturing takes a very, very long time. It took their Nintendo 40 years to do it, right?
Yeah.
And Amazon is just trying to like, well, this is gonna be a hit. This is gonna be our Fortnite, and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The issue with Xbox is that, and I said this before, is that they had Halo, they had Gears of War, and I think they dropped the ball. And Colt said this: they dropped the ball in terms of being able to nurture the powerful IP that brought us into Xbox. Someone said Brute Force was a great game on Xbox. Yeah, I fucking love Brute Force.
What?
I wouldn't mind that IP coming back. I love Crimson Skies. I was playing Xbox.
Good.
Yeah, I was playing Xbox way back in the day. I'm like, well, where are all these IP? We got Halo, and 343 has been mucking that up for the past decade, right?
Yeah.
We got Gears, and
Right,
I
guys.
love Gears. I think Gears is great. Gears has not been fucked up. Gears 4 was probably the weakest, and it's still a great game. I love Gears 4.
I agree.
I think the issue is that they just weren't able to market it, and also it was on the Xbox One, and Xbox One had that pall hanging over it.
Yeah.
We remember.
But why did we have to wait so long for a new Fable IP?
I mean,
They
Fable
shut
made a
that
lot of
studio
missteps.
Yeah,
did
Fable
make a lot
fucked
of
up.
mistakes, Yeah.
It was
Fable
feasible
made-
in you.
Fable 3 was really bad, and then they made Microsoft and what's his name, Don Matrick, basically made Peter Molyneux and this team make Fable. What was it called? The Kinect game?
Legends.
Yeah.
No,
Legends.
Not
Yeah.
Legends. It was like
No,
Fable.
Legends wasn't.
Fable.
I never played the horse
Kinect
race
or
Not
one.
Fable
something.
Legends.
Yeah.
Journey, something in it.
Yeah, Fable Journey. Yeah, and then Fable Legends couldn't kind of get off the ground, and I was really looking forward to that. And I heard it was great. The people that tested it, but yeah, Fable was in a bad spot for a good decade.
Yeah.
And now we just heard this week, Peter Molyneux said that he's really impressed with the first showing of Fable.
Oh, really?
In the showcase. Yeah, he said they captured the wonder and the magic. I have to look up the report on it. I think IGN reported on it. But yeah,
That's
he
kinda
said he was
crazy.
really pleased with the tone and the humor and the way they captured the new look for Fable. So that's a good thing to
says
hear.
a lot. Then the creator of Fable has said that they've captured her. That's interesting. When the community itself is like, "Is this really Fable?" And when he says it, that has some weight behind it. But
Hey,
you're
I like
right,
Fable
Gene,
3 anyways. It doesn't matter to me. I liked all Fable games. Although Fable 3 has the worst pause screen of all time, ever in a video game.
I just
is
finished
Fable
it
3
a
with the
few
dog?
months ago. They all have a dog, I think.
Is it?
All three
Fable
of them.
2 and 3.
2 and
has a
3.
dog. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a dog.
And I really like the combat in Fable 3, even though it feels very much 2011 or 2010. But I just finished it, Gene, I think January, February was the first time I really sat down and went all the way through it. And other than the ending, that's kind of a cool game.
The ending sucked
So-
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ending was terrible.
Point being, the good things to come for Fable, I think. Yeah.
I love playing Halo on back compat, and that's what actually got me back into the Xbox ecosystem. The Phil's commitment to back compatibility. So like the Phil Spencer era has been great, and that kind of goes back to what Cole was saying, where it's like Phil was able to finally get Microsoft funding for this, and this is something I said before. Microsoft is not fundamentally an entertainment company.
Yeah.
Correct.
That Nintendo, that's all they got is toys and video games, right? Mm-hmm. Sony has Sony Music, Sony has Sony Pictures. They do know how to manage creative IP throughout the ages. Not amazingly, but they've done that.
Creatively,
and I think that's what Microsoft has been learning to do over the past 20-some years, and that's why the funding wasn't there, and they realized, we fucked up. Like this isn't just like software; this is actual creativity. We need to nurture talent. We need to keep talent here, and that's what they've been doing, and that's what we might see that finally pay off. Coming this fall with Starfield, with Bethesda, and we might see that pay off next year with everything that they showed in the recent showcase.
I think that that's a good point about the fact that Microsoft isn't a creative-led industry, but despite that, I do see lessons learned. I find it a little bit, it might sound stupid, endearing of Microsoft of anything, but the Xbox division itself is learning. And the division itself is helmed by people, whether or not they're just lizards to you or not. But I just feel like there is that human element of learning, erring, communication, and obvious visible.
You just
signs.
reminded me. I need to interrupt you because you reminded me. You asked me 2 questions and I only answered one of them. You asked me, did Xbox brute force their way into the industry? And you asked me, are Microsoft evil? And I said, yes, they did brute force their way into the industry. But I forgot to say, yes, Microsoft are evil. Of course they are. Massive corporation, horrible bastards. I think, I don't trust. I'm very skeptical of Microsoft and their vision for the future. I don't know what Phil Spencer promised them to get them to go all in on gaming. I don't know that Microsoft are going to steer us to a better place long term, but I do think the likes of Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond are not evil and do understand gaming and are kind of pushing in the direction that we as people that play on consoles and PCs and cool VR headsets and things like that. The direction that people like us want, they do look after. So I'm glad that they're there. But yes, Microsoft are evil.
Okay,
I mean, that's why you see that in the Don Matrick era, right, where they weren't talking about being creative. They wanted to be a platform to host TV shows, to host movies. This is where you watch Netflix. And to be fair, I watch so much Netflix, and I bought so many goddamn TV shows on the Xbox 360. So if they were looking at those metrics and those metrics were guiding the Xbox One era, I was part of the problem,
Well, Don Matrick had a good vision in 2010, 2009, 2010. He wanted Windows Live. He actually wanted us to have 3 360s in our house, one in the family room, one in one of the spare rooms, and one in the bedroom. And they would all be connected to your computer, and you could listen to your music and your TV all through the apps, because this was a few years pre-smart TV. Now smart TVs have kicked that idea out the window. Mm-hmm. But when he went into the reveal of the Xbox One pushing an entertainment box, you're right. That's when James everyone's like the Xbox One, the pall that went over the Xbox as an entertainment brand for gaming.
Yeah.
But we're far beyond that. It was a total.
That.
Yeah, I mean, Phil,
that's the thing. We're finally seeing what Xbox we've always wanted Xbox to be. Which is basically a continuation of the glorious 360 area, where they were investing in games, they were investing in IP.
Yeah. Well, you asked what you don't know what Phil Spencer wanted to bring to Microsoft when he's going all in gaming, and I was like, money. I think all he promised them was this is a hot commodity. This is a hot industry. It's bigger than ever right now. We have to strike while the iron's hot, and we're going to make a lot of money. And Xbox as a platform is a viable thing. If you just give it a shot, we have some investment, and
I think
it's going to take a little bit.
There, 90% of it was mobile. I think there's a lot of synergy with Game Pass being a sub model. Microsoft, Satya Nadella, they love everything on the subscription based stuff. So there's synergy with that model. Game Pass is a disruptor as well. Combine that with the kind of money you make on mobile and cloud, it's an easy sell if you get your numbers right based on the huge numbers there, which don't actually necessarily align with our interests actually as core gamers. So we need to be mindful of that. And I think one of the things that these proceedings have shown is that Microsoft generally is heavily motivated by mobile and cloud, which even Sony say. Let me just read these super chats and then we'll swim into several topics. But Danny Passion Official with a $2 super chat. Microsoft just released their official numbers. PC is, and his fist bump, 21 million, I think, or something, Xbox Series consoles sold. I think this was, or something. I don't know if that's legit. I don't know what the official PC
That's a VG
are.
Charts guesstimation.
No, that wasn't.
Okay.
That was from an Xbox developer conference in South America, I think. So it was an official Xbox slide. Yeah.
So is that poor or bad? I don't know. Is that good?
That's low. I think that's low. But
is it?
Phil just said that the Xbox Series console has surpassed 360 up to this point, but the 360 was more popular, but gaming is so much bigger. There's a wider lane of people buying game consoles. So I think the Series X still has a lot of ground to make up, but that's not the only place where they need to sell.
Okay. Well, okay. 21 million is low, then it's low. Mr. MDJ with a $5 super chat. The entire issue that Colin has is that Xbox decided that they didn't want to compete under the rules defined by Sony. Mr. MDJ, I like you.
Technically, it's even the rules defined by Nintendo back in the day. Nintendo is the one making first-party games back in the 80s, you know? They set that standard, you know?
The first party exclusive standard. Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to go into that topic as well briefly. Face with another $20 super chat. Thank you. He goes, PlayStation is buying studios. Xbox is buying publishers. That's a huge difference regardless of what the judge decides. One side is going to be really salty. One side is definitely going to be salty. The other's going to be celebrating. We'll talk about at the end of the show what the panel's viewpoint is on how this will pan out. And we'll see who has egg on their faces.
The word publishers doesn't matter, because if Xbox decided to go and buy 8 studios instead of buying ZeniMax, if they bought a comparable size studios, they would say, why do they need to buy all these studios? But then they buy a publisher. So it's like... it's like 23 studios on PlayStation side and 20, I think it's 21 maybe on PlayStation, 23 on Xbox. Like, we're on even playing ground now, and they want to grab a couple more that just make Call of Duty, and wow.
I think ABK is more than that, and yes, cloud factors into the price a lot. But this whole publisher thing, look, just because Sony can't afford to play on that level playing field doesn't mean we should bemoan Microsoft for doing it. I think it's really good. If PlayStation could afford publisher level, and some publishers I reckon they can, then no one would be crying about this. And I'm pretty sure Colin would force his crocodile tears if Sony did do it for the sake of trying to maintain that posterity. But it's just... I don't really give a shit about the crocodile tears about consolidation and publisher level buyouts. And this industry has more than enough meat for someone to, especially Sony with this massive lead, to get slapped around a little bit. That's what we need in this industry. So yeah, can I give a massive shout out to H2O with $100 Saudi Dubai dinners? What a crazy guy. He can't even stay up to watch the show every time. It's 1 a.m. in Dubai. He says, peace and blessings, Gaz and Asa, and the entire panel. He's hoping that Microsoft wins and this ABK chapter is closed so we can all move on, and be one big happy family. What do you think is going to happen, H2O? It's not going to be happy, that's for sure. I should be sleeping. Damn, I'm out. From Dubai with love. P.S. Love you, Colt. You're the coolest cat on YouTube. I don't know if you're talking about Jean's cat, who's so cute. Although I was just like, it was literally.
Everyone wants to know what the cat's name is. They keep asking.
Jack.
Oh,
his name is Jack.
Jack. Awesome.
Such a cute cat, man. And it's just there, just loving. He actually cared about. Maybe he just wants to eat. That's the only time cats care, don't they? It's just like when they.
We don't get enough pets on Go Live. Just not enough.
I love a cat, but Yeah, like enough pussy. Daddy Passion Official with a $2 super chat says facts. Also, where Microsoft is big is on
He
PC.
doesn't, by the way.
Take a look. Huh?
I said you don't, by the way, but
You know it's true, chat. You know it's true. Yeah, so but PC is where Dorian is right. PC is where Microsoft and Phil Spencer have said that the trajectory for Game Pass is actually growing, whereas on console it's stalled. Now,
Yes, that's true.
the big so Jim Ryan, this guy doesn't have the testicles to appear in court because he knows he would be a shambles. I'm saying it. And he does a deposition via video call. And in this court, there were lots of fiery things here, a lot of contradictory statements, but that didn't help the FTC because the FTC, for some reason, really, really approached this with COD-only lens and a heavy leaning on the console competition market argument, whereas Jim Ryan then comes out and says he doesn't like Starfield being exclusive on Xbox, but he doesn't think it's anti-competitive. He goes, and what else he says, and he also says, and this is a bit controversial, he thinks publishers are unanimously against Game Pass. He says, I talked to all the publishers and they unanimously do not like Game Pass because it's value destructive, adding that it's a very commonly held view by publishers. Ryan said that I believe that stance Microsoft is taking with regards to subscription services, service pricing is evident as evidence of partial foreclosure. Asa, do you believe Jim Ryan and his view that publishers hate Game Pass? And why would they hate Game Pass?
The thing that really that makes it hard to fathom how he got away with saying that is the word unanimously. Because if he says there's been some evidence, some publishers have these concerns about Game Pass, yeah, that stands up. Like some of them do have some concerns about Game Pass. The theory that it can devalue games, you're talking about these games with like a 200 million budget. Maybe at the moment it's quite difficult to put those in a service, right? Until the scale is there. So there's something to that, but to say publishers unanimously hate it, like they definitely love it under certain circumstances. Many of them came out afterwards and were like, by the way, we really like Game Pass. So, yeah. Of course. How is that admissible? Like, no, they don't unanimously hate it, Jim. I don't know what else to say on that. No.
We also said it's the pricing is evidence of partial foreclosure. What do we think about that?
So that's probably based around the Call of Duty contract that Sony were offered had specific terms on what they can charge if they want to put it in Call of Duty. And they said that if they were to take up that contract and put Call of Duty in PlayStation Plus for the price that was there, they wouldn't really be able to put anything else into PlayStation Plus. It's not sustainable. So in that sense, he's talking about like this is foreclosure because we can't compete on the terms that they're giving us. Whether he was eloquent enough to get that across, whether that part was redacted, whether there was some of this stuff. I mean, I'm saying this as someone who did not watch the court case. I was busy playing Quake 3 in virtual reality, so I don't really know what's going on. I'm trying to pick up the pieces here, but yeah.
It's a bit of a weird one, Gene. Game Pass to me is a positive. There are some inherent risks with the model, but just keep it there seems to be this intrinsic desire or need. Perhaps the model will need to sell content on, so microtransactions are going to need to be part of it. But then Microsoft's suite of games, Starfield and Fable and Hellblade and Avowed. I mean, these are their main games. These games don't look like they have any microtransactions, or if they do, it doesn't need a heavy leaning on those. These are big, chunky games, RPGs and single-player games, man. So
clearly
I've completely dressed up this question leading to you, but what do you think of Game Pass? Do you think Jim Ryan is chatting shit?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's clearly hyperbole. Look at Capcom. Yeah. Capcom's still committed to it. Capcom is still one of the biggest publishers out today, and they're successful. They don't need to do Game Pass, but they still will every once in a while. Yeah.
There's a reason why the publishers are not being held at gunpoint. It's a disruptive thing, but publishers will want to see it. I don't see on what value destructive. How is it value destructive? Can someone explain that to me? I'm genuinely asking that question. How could it potentially be value destructive? I don't know.
So, like I said a
consumer
moment
side, I
ago, he
don't
can
know.
only be talking about the value of specific games that they want to put in there. So, as Sony, with the way that they budget their games at the moment, we saw the budget for Horizon, we saw the budget for The Last of Us. That model might not work. Right, and it's one of those things because it's funny because it might not work for the moment with the scale of these services, and as they get bigger, budgets and things can shift. But it's funny because if you look at what Microsoft are actually doing and what Sony are actually doing, like you just said, Microsoft have much less of a leaning on service at the moment than Sony. If you look at the last two showcases, like Microsoft are the ones that are doing Game Pass, but they had like Avowed and Starfield and like games that are standalone single player experiences working within that service. And whether that's like them riding a massive cost to get this service out in the open or not, either way, you can't argue that Sony's leaning at the moment is very much towards games as a service. They did their showcase, and there was a lot of service games in there, which kind of undermines their own argument on value destructive to me. But
can I just say I'm shocked that those documents were redacted so poorly. I cannot believe.
I can't believe that.
I can't believe that Sony's lawyers were just like, oh yeah, well fucking whatever,
And Microsoft did it too.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because like I've covered city and state government, and city and state government are famously incompetent about so many different things, but they redact their documents pretty damn good.
Use the right pens.
It's because they have nothing better to do.
In a $70 billion deal, do you do that? Microsoft, you have no excuse. FTC, we kind of know they're a bit incompetent, really. There was a marked divide, in my opinion, having listened to it a couple of times, not as I had my own legal work to do than just listen to it. But when I was listening to the council, Microsoft outclassed them. I almost felt the judge felt pity when she said, like, well done, you did as best as you could to the FTC based, public lawyers as opposed to private entities that could expend quite a bit on private lawyers. But the redaction point is like, how can you not? I'm just astounded. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful we got all this disclosure as a result of them not being able to mark things in the right pen. So it's a bit
that we know that Horizon and The Last of Us Part 2 cost over $200 million. That's significant for all of us to know.
So why is that significant? $220 million for these two games. Do you get to, is this perhaps why
just for the record, just to know, because before, like we oh my god, Grand Theft Auto 5 is the most expensive game ever. Remember, Shenmue was the most expensive game ever. So now we know where. So now we know in 2020 at least, 2021, 22, where big AAA budgets might be around.
Yeah, and that's a lot of money, man. 5 years. And I can see why Sony is enticed by the gas model, because they're like, for the comparatively low dev cost and perhaps time, they could be making loads. I wonder what Sea of Thieves development costs would have been.
So that's what Jim Ryan has told me years ago. He's like, we're not making our IP work hard enough for us.
Is that what he told you?
Yeah. And he's like, he wants to squeeze more out of the IP, because it's like The Last of Us sold like what, 8 million, 9 million, 10 million, and that's it, for $220 million. That's it. It's like we need more, which is why you clearly see their strategy right now with the Uncharted movies, with Last of Us, HBO, all that stuff.
He's also referring to getting those games on PC as soon as they can once they've dried up the console sales market.
That too.
Because he's pretty clear that he doesn't want to promise to his PlayStation fans that they'll only be on console. He wants to appease the sales on PC. He wants to make sure that once that has dipped far enough that they have the teams in order to put them on PC. And because he said the console is not enough. That was his quote last year, a year and a half ago. And they're watching everybody else sell these games to the tune of 8 to 20 million, which they've only done with 1 or 2 games recently. So
yeah, I mean they want Nintendo numbers. Look at Zelda did 10 million in 3 days. Like no other game has done that. Other than Pokemon.
Yeah.
Or think about how much the guys will love this one. How much Apex Legends probably cost Respawn to make, and how much they made. True. And sometimes Gaz and I will talk about this in content creator analogies, like as a YouTuber, like Gaz and I can spend 8 hours on a video and it just kind of goes and then it's done and it doesn't get any views, and then somebody else that we work with on YouTube will spend an hour making a video and they'll get 80,000 views in 2 days. And we're like, what the heck? It's like sometimes you just get the right combination with a little less effort and it pays off. And then Gaz and I are like,
no, it's just facts. I mean, you can draw parallels with that.
That happens a lot, even in the Washington Post, where like I piss a lot of my coworkers off because like they're like, oh, I worked on this investigation and we had lawyers and we spent like 8 months working on the story, and yet your story about Zelda did more. You know?
Oh shit!
Right? Yep.
How do the Washington? Just as a personal question, but how do they view gaming as a whole? Obviously, they're enough to keep what they've cut.
Well, the funny thing is
but...
that our interim CEO actually used to work for Microsoft, and she was actually instrumental in the launch of the original Microsoft Flight Simulator back in the day.
Oh shit!
So I'm like, oh, she knows about games. Let me get in her ear. But otherwise, nobody knows anything about games in Washington.
Is it no? I didn't want they view it a little bit like entertainment.
Yeah. It's pretty rough, and that there's a reason why we got my section got laid off. It's not because we weren't doing bad traffic. It's because they just don't think that we need to be covering games that much.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Well, I'm glad you're still there because.
Yeah, they said, well, we just got genes, and that's enough. And it's like, well, it kind of isn't, but you know, I'm glad I still got my job, and I'm glad for that. And you know, I think part of it is due to my 8 years of service there, and I've done so many different things at the Washington Post. So even if I weren't covering games, you can easily slide me into like another like slot, a job there. But I like covering games. I like what I'm doing. I like being able to be on Go Daily and talk to you guys. I like having this, you know. So
yeah, it's wicked. This is like, where the money's at anyway in terms of the entertainment industry.
But the mainstream media is absolutely completely out of touch with everything. You know, they couldn't even see social media coming. You know, I've had so many debates I'm so fucking tired, you guys. I've had so many debates over the years with editors and managers saying like, we need to do this stuff online. We need to do this. We need to do that. And they're like everything you were saying, Gene, sounds like an alien language. I've literally had that told to me when I say like, we need to have, you know, the metrics. We need to blah blah blah. Everything I said is just a foreign language to them, and.
I have the same thing with work.
Is where it is. And that's why content creators have become the new media. You know, I've been saying this for years. Is that influencers, content creators are where people go for news and information now, and that's where the money is going. Look, someone just fucking paid $99 for a super chat. You know, like nobody would pay $99 for the Washington Post. Period.
Let's shout out to H2O though. He's like a rich Arab.
Well, yeah. I mean, he is in Dubai. That's true. So
yeah, he is. It's Dubai money. He's nothing for him. But
the Washington Post would love that Dubai money too, but we don't get it. You know?
It's different. But you're right about the balance shifting towards content creators. Like I even see the big guys like Dustin Legary on his personal channel. They're all grifty towards the content creator aspect of it for a reason. Let me read the super chat. Frozen King with the $5. Thank you, man. He goes, 21 million is not low. Sony's at 38 million. Okay. And that means Xbox is keeping pace and it's not in a 2-to-1 deficit like last gen. And maybe the number might be getting higher, but there is a lot of pressure. I think Sony is doing very well. I think the gap was massive last year. They gained a lot of momentum. I'm feeling that will change as soon as Starfield hits and soon these games are starting to hit, because like Phil Spencer says, he can see it. Now we can also see it too, Phil, unless you mess it up. Hoggy Channy, good to see you, brother. Thank you for the $10 super chat, man, and being a member for God knows how long and part of the team. Lion Ryan should have said, very large publishers that make billions in profits don't like a disruptive model that forces more value for the consumer. Does Xbox Game Studio, a publisher, not like Game Pass? Tricky. So you're thinking, he was off the bat, he was wrong because Microsoft as a publisher would have disagreed. Well, most have, and they after the fact did come out publicly. There were quite a few who said, no, we like it. And it's quite nice to see them come out and say it, not because of console wars, but just like it feels a little bit more natural because they're like, this is a bit silly, the statement. Huggy, again, thank you, because I disagree, Asa. The current economics of Game Pass already allow for games that cost as much as Sony's games. Microsoft reported $1 billion a quarter in sub-revenue. What do you want to say?
Oh, that's cool. Like, to be clear, you're not disagreeing with me there. So Gaz asked what Jim Ryan was trying to say, and I'm looking at what Jim Ryan said, and I'm seeing that if you look at the value of Game Pass, there's no way that you can reason that he's saying that it's bad value for consumers. So the only angle that I can see is that he's like positioning it around big budget games or his games specifically. So, I mean, you're not like I say, you're not really disagreeing with me. I'm just trying to posture and speculate on what Jim Ryan's trying to get across with his kind of balmy thing that he said.
Okay. Games Law, thank you for the 2 euro super chat. Goes, was hoping for a four-way. What? Sorry, I read that wrong. Wait, I was hoping for. It's the way because he used numbers as opposed to words. I was hoping for a way for Microsoft getting Call of Duty but losing ABK. I don't care. I want Blizzard. I want that part
It is
of
crazy
it
how much of the hearings is just all about Call of Duty. Just Call of Duty, Call of Duty, Call of Duty.
Fuck it. But that's where the FTC kind of fucked themselves. Although they just need to prove that an injunction is warranted, which has a lower bar.
I think the judge had said that it's important to remind you that the FTC is a consumer advocate and not the Sony advocate. And it feels like Sony's big bugaboo about the deal is the possibility of losing Call of Duty.
Losing their
that's
competition.
The so, Gene, do you agree that FTC kind of seems like it's protecting PlayStation, or appeared like it, as opposed to the consumer? Because the word consumer was very rarely used.
It does feel like a lot of the perspectives. From what I'm not paying attention directly to it, but it does feel like from what I've seen that they're kind of echoing what Sony would say, and it feels like they're representing Sony as opposed to the FTC, and especially because that whole hullabaloo about like, oh, what is Nintendo? And it's like, if you're actually thinking about the whole market, then of course you're going to consider Nintendo. Nintendo is absolutely a competitor. There's no question about it. That's not even a question. Period. Yeah.
I think the FTC screwed themselves on that point.
That's like saying that the LA Times is not a competitor to Washington Post. I mean, like we're like 20 times bigger than the LA Times, but they're still a competitor.
Interesting.
What were they trying to accomplish by leaving Nintendo out of the conversation?
Because I think they're trying to perhaps because Nintendo doesn't rely on COD, and the whole argument is geared towards Call of Duty is so instrumental. Yeah. So it's like, what about Nintendo? Nintendo's like staring you in the face.
Yeah,
so
and that's why Kotick was like, oh yeah, well we just didn't think COD was like the Switch was going to be a big deal, and that was my fault. Which is crazy. I can't believe Bobby Kotick is the one who says no Call of Duty on Nintendo Switch. Like, why the fuck is that your call?
Yeah. But
would a port of Call of Duty that is crossplay work okay on a Switch? I mean, they have a mobile version, but mobiles are typically more powerful than a Switch. Most mobile smartphones are new ones, aren't they?
There's one thing. Bobby Kotick said that playing Call of Duty on a phone is like trying to use a fridge as like a safe to protect your valuables or whatever.
Yes.
Like, that's a marketing line for Call of Duty Mobile, isn't it? Well done, Bobby.
I thought that as well. Like, hey man, you've got a game on mobile. Do you not remember?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't remember what the numbers were. The numbers came up for Call of Duty on mobile, and it was like huge. 26 million or so. I can't remember what it was. It was this huge number. That Call of Duty Mobile is massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's massively popular. And it's Warzone or Warzone, whatever.
An Unreal 5 engine game is on the Switch. It's Fortnite.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Bobby Kotick was weird during his one because he, first of all, like he said, and this is like weird to me. He's like, what did he say about Game Pass? Was he dismissive of Game Pass? No,
yes.
What was it? was it dismissive of Game Pass? Just said he didn't believe in Game Pass.
I don't know.
Yeah,
There's a theory going around that Kotick doesn't want the deal
Games on
anymore,
Game Pass.
Yeah. So his performance on the stand was intentionally bad to kind of just be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just done with this. You know.
Yeah.
Maybe just get the $3 billion from Microsoft and we'll just move on from July.
Yeah, his stance was that it wasn't
wow.
good for the sales of a game, or it wasn't advantageous for the developers or something like that. But I mean, they have yet to want to sign with Xbox. Like, everyone always forgets that if you come to Game Pass as a developer or publisher, that there's an amount that you agreed to, and that never comes into the equation or into the conversation about why a game is on Game Pass. And publishers say, we love Game Pass because Xbox gave them a nice healthy sum of money that they feel is a fair market value for games they may not sell on Xbox console because it's on Game Pass. And they, hey, that sounds great. But going back to Jim Ryan saying, unanimously the publishers that I talk to don't like Game Pass. Like, well, were you talking to the publishers that typically sign with you for money-head exclusivity on PlayStation, or what was that?
So on the one hand,
are you just like quoting Square Enix?
Yeah.
On the one hand, though, what Bobby was saying there about like we're never going to put Call of Duty on Game Pass or whatever else, you can read that two ways. One, yeah, he's probably being honest because that hasn't been Activision's strategy going forwards, but doesn't like. Sure. You could say that he's kind of supporting Jim Ryan's like publishers hate this Game Pass thing statement, but more so you could say that he's painting a picture that if the deal doesn't go through, it's going to be worse for consumers because we're not going to put our games on Game Pass. So it's not he's not necessarily self-sabotaging with what he said there, or maybe he is because he's the devil.
I don't see how that could be weaponized, or a judge would have made that consideration against the deal. So I was like, okay, maybe he himself, and he talks about him doing what the shareholders want him to do, and all of that none of it seemed geared towards giving ammo to the FTC. So you're right there. Feels like a bit of a victim act. Also, I'm very shocked that this is shocking. He said Microsoft didn't even consult him in offering a 10-year deal to Nintendo for Call of Duty. How the fuck does that happen? The guy's the freaking head of freaking ABK, and Microsoft made a 10-year deal for COD. On Nintendo didn't even fucking consult the guy. I thought that was great. If it's true, that's amazing, because and he gave it under oath, but maybe it's Bobby.
You're gonna be gone anyway.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Microsoft don't give a shit about this. To me, that reads like this guy is definitely going. This answer to me, without a shadow of a doubt, he wants his golden parachute, and he's gonna piss off. Microsoft also wants him to piss off because they didn't respect him enough to even involve him in that conversation. I mean, I'm surprised that's even happened. That's fucking crazy to me. How do you not involve him in a 10-year deal for COD? It's his IP, or the head of his studio's IP. It's fucking crazy. How is business done?
What else was really bizarre about the Nintendo thing is apparently there was something submitted in the whole proceedings that said actually Nintendo didn't really understand what they were signing. They was like, call it what? Yeah, we don't really know what this contract means, but sure, we'll sign it. That's wild.
Sure, we'll have a game. Running fucking Tetris and our thing. How the hell is going to do that? But he also gave away the specs potentially for the new Switch or Nintendo, whatever. Super Switch.
It might be equal to the Xbox One or PS4, which would be great. It'd be great.
Is that good? Because I think a lot of people met that positively, and I'm like, maybe?
I don't know. I'm like, shoot for. I mean, maybe they mean it's as good as a Pro or a 1X or something, and it probably is, because that's kind of where the Rogue Ally sits, or the Steam Deck in many ways.
And the Rogue Ally, yeah, that's pretty much where it is.
Although they're able to make concessions that the consoles can't, so. I just want Nintendo's console to just be more welcoming for big third-party games. Like, if a new Assassin's Creed game comes out, they're like, oh, yeah, that'll probably run on the new Switch. I think that'd be really great for Nintendo, and you really wouldn't need much more than a Nintendo console if it could run all of their amazing games plus most everything else you can get a hold of. But Nintendo's never had to do that.
Do you know what? Just like, for me, I don't give a shit if they play third-party games or not. I've got a PlayStation and an Xbox and a PC that can play Call of Duty, so I don't care for Nintendo supporting that. What I want from their next console is just a better TV experience. So when you talk about like the potential power of this thing, you look at the Switch and assume that they're going to carry that model forwards. There's like two prongs to that. It's the power when you're on the go, which for me, I don't care about. I don't play things on the go. But the Switch was okay in that environment. And there's hooking it up to a TV, which is where for me it really falls behind, because it was okay in the portable environment because there wasn't really much like high-end competition when that was around for many years. It was the best portable.
What do you
way to
not
play
like
games.
about it docked? It's
Docked,
Still
it's
shit res.
old and like it's shit res and frame rate and all the rest of it, like you'd expect from the other consoles. If I'm going to put it on like a premium screen, I just want it to deliver up to that standard, which Sony and Microsoft both tried to deliver in the last gen with the Pro and the
1080,
other
yeah,
consoles.
it's pretty rare for like Zelda isn't 1080 on the Switch. The
On
most
docked,
recent Zelda,
yeah.
it's 900p. Yeah, so
And I might sound
But then
really
again,
snobby
Final
saying that, like I
Fantasy
want it to be
dropped
an
down to
RTX 4090. I don't want it to be like super high end. I just want it to kind of cater to my TV a little better.
yeah.
I agree. That's a good point there. Another angle they could potentially have. Docked mode. Enhance it a little bit more.
They have this really interesting position in the console space because they're not AMD, they're Nvidia. So, like, well, obviously, Cole, I'd love everybody to do VR, but I'm not expecting that from Nintendo. But they have Nvidia hardware, so they can position things differently. They can potentially take advantage of DLSS and all these wonderful technologies that they're pushing in the PC space. I'd be interested.
But they won't. But they won't. Let's be real. Huggy Alakonga with a £5 super chat. Jim Lion Ryan. I don't know what kind of name that is. Jim Lion Ryan. Matt Suit the narrative booty and I can do no wrong. Phil Halo Spencer equal money, money, money. Of course they care about us gamers. Hey man, Phil Spencer cares. Matt Booty, I don't know, but Phil Spencer cares. I believe in Phil Spencer. To believe in it, and Colt is always in party chat with him. He knows.
Well, I want to talk to Matt Booty. I feel like Matt. I told people I had this feeling that Matt Booty was kind of a gosh dang it, kick some butt, and it sounds like he is because he's
I know
he is.
He is pretty regressive. I thought he was a bit like, what is he doing? He's just sitting there
Matt Booty came from an era where they were in a massive warehouse with a game studio and a production facility that made the game. So they would build Cruisin' USA and get it all up to par, and then they would put it on a board and build it into a cabinet and ship it to locations so people could play the arcade games. Like they did it all in one place. So he comes from an old school gaming industry, and now he's here and he's like, he looks at the Microsoft stacks of money. He's like, we could, like you said at the beginning of the show, we could buy Sony out of business. I think it was Matt's way of saying, you brought me in here to run the studios.
Yeah.
Let's flex. Let's show we can compete, and let's get in this segment. And I think Asa nailed it when he said he didn't mean they were going to put him out of business. That wasn't what they wanted to do. He's saying, look, we could. So why are we laying down here and going, oh, let's be super careful. Well, we don't want people to think we're the bad guy. He's like, let's flex.
Absolutely.
And I like that. And Xbox needed that blood.
It was hardly a controversial tweet at all. And then obviously the gallopers were just going on at this, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like that is the most like very matter of fact, like, well, you don't want them to assess their strategy and their unique positioning and all the wealth that they have. You read that into, we are going in to destroy it. And then inversely, you've got freaking PlayStation saying, we went out there to freaking kill Xbox every time, every year, and this generation is the same. It's like, what
That's
are you
the thing.
doing?
Outside of like the legalese, the legal ramifications of what Booty said, I have no problem with what he said because I also kind of think that way. I'd be like, fuck the New York Times, just fucking destroy them. I'm saying that right now here live, So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you do in business. If you think that is controversial, you need to have a bit of a wake-up call because you'd want to see what PlayStation say, and I guarantee you, their internal correspondence is far more incendiary and far more methodical about how to destroy and dismantle competition, because their conduct, all of it, is a sign and a reflection of that disposition. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
It's like I don't know if you guys watched the HBO Succession, but it's like what the father Logan Roy said. Sometimes it is a big dick competition.
It is. That's what big business is. It is. That's genuinely. People need to kind of wake up, and this should wake you up to the whole truth of that, and just how crazy it is, even at high levels. What the top execs think. David Leatherwood, thank you for your first ever super chat on this channel. Thank you for the $5. Because developers get to double dip money from Game Pass and money from people that end up buying it permanently. Yes, they absolutely do. And they also get to make money off other supplementary content as well if they do have it, DLC or MTs if the game has it. It's just, and also invites other people to spend within that environment. It's fostering that environment and getting people invested into it. Hoggy Channy with a £10 suit was $10. Sorry, you're not here yet. Super chat, because can they involve Kotick in that? It's talking about the ABK Nintendo conversation. Wouldn't that be a business conversation before they actually own them? I don't know if they could discuss it. COD uses an id Tech based engine. It is on Switch. He could be involved in a conversation about offering the 10-year deal. I don't see any reason why he could not be involved. This is
really tricky because the contradiction here is that Microsoft for the longest time told us that they couldn't even speculate on whether games would, like from ZeniMax, would be exclusive until the deal was signed and over the line, because that would be illegal. So the contradiction is that now they're like, yeah, we can offer contracts to anyone before the deal's over the line because we were lying the first time. Or, it's a little bit strange. Like, what is the truth of this? I don't know American law. I don't know who Microsoft can and can't talk to or what business decisions they can make before the deal has crossed the line. But there's definitely an inconsistency between what they said on one and what they're doing on the other. So.
Sorry, I missed that. I was just, why did you freaking... That was a good chat from Jeeves, Colt. You just blocked it. I don't block him. Oh, no, you just marked his message. I thought you banned him. Sorry. Asa?
No.
Sorry, I completely ADHD'd. Please don't. I'm sorry. So another part of this big... So, we're crazy. Now, imagine if this happened. We found out. After all the month of speculation and people putting these two in their lists, Microsoft was seriously interested in acquiring Sega and Square Enix. Can you imagine the shit show, especially for the latter, if that happened? But geez, man, that email. So we got to see internal correspondence for them. And Phil Spencer emailed loads of people. And let me quickly read. This is, well, I don't know if there's any... Well, I'll do it. I'll just do it instead of blabbering about doing it. I'm writing to request strategy approval to approach Sega Sammy regarding a potential acquisition of their Sega gaming studios. For context, Bill, and I think who's Bill? Is it not Bill Clinton? Not Bill Clinton. Bill Gates. This is 2020. Okay, so it wouldn't be him. I've reviewed the business case for acquiring Sega, and both are supportive. As Sega gaming studios are owned by Sega Sammy, a publicly traded Japanese company, we have called out a few deal complexities in the memo. So they acknowledge those complexities. Sega's gaming has represented roughly half of Sega Sammy's revenue, $900 million in revenue, blah, 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 blah. And then after that, we found out that Sega have come out and said that they're not interested at the moment to be purchased. Obviously, that might change. And then they also said that they have the really good relationship with Microsoft. And then Sarah Bond, who's in the UK, of all the places in London, manages to take a photo of the M4 that I've been on that M4 going into London. If the picture didn't tell you, I'm telling you, that is 1 trillion% intentional. That is the most random place to take a picture. Sega's freaking building.
There was only one thing in the picture.
That's freaking building, the Sega site, bro. That is in the middle of no. I'm trying to tell people that to take a picture there is so random. As an American tourist going to London, that's leading into Shepherd's Bush and Hammersmith and freaking London, and you take that picture of that. Why did she do that? Is it consolidation talk? The same week we hear this stuff. I mean, come on, Gene. Microsoft are gearing up for something, surely. What's your take on it? And why Sega? Why Sega?
I actually think Sega would make sense, at least in terms of like creatively. I've always thought of the Xbox as, and I think a lot of people have, if you know the history, I've always thought of the Xbox as a successor to the Dreamcast, right?
Yes, we always say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Well,
if you know the history, then you know that it makes sense, you know. And
Yes.
if you've been playing Xbox since the beginning, then you know that it makes sense.
This is the spiritual successor to the Dreamcast. That's the original Xbox was. Basically
Yeah, I
that.
played Sonic Frontiers on my Xbox because for me that just makes sense. I think if it's not on Nintendo, then it would be on Xbox. You know, so I wouldn't be surprised about that. You know, Square Enix would definitely go insane. It would make people go insane.
Man.
It wouldn't be quite the levels of what France is going through right now, but like at least mentally, probably. Yeah.
France. It would be. I'm sorry. It'll probably be worse. You'd see bigger riots than what's happening in France if Square Enix. Square Enix would be the absolute piss take, considering the fact that really don't have energy synergy with Microsoft really compared to PlayStation and Xbox. But Cole, that would destroy the rectum of so many PlayStation fanboys, like Square Enix, and that would be. Come on, Square Enix makes more sense than Sega to me. Even though the synergy in terms of value, Microsoft needs to do something in the JRPG space. And Hagi Chani with the $5 super chat, who's been saying Square first, Sega second as targets? He has. Hagi's been saying it for ages. So he kept saying Square, and I kept saying there's no synergy there, which I maintained. But if that was high on their priority list, which it was, even you as a JRPG fan, a non-fan, would still value that, surely. Which one would you like? Sega or
Are you asking me which one I
Yeah.
like, either Sega or Square?
And then tell us which one makes more sense.
Yeah, because when you were mentioning Hargeet reminded me yesterday that Square has a bunch of big franchises, because normally I thought just their Final Fantasy stuff hit and they have some other stuff that doesn't, but he was naming some of their franchises that are really big. The rectal impaction of Square Enix would be crazy. But yeah, I mean, I would choose Square over Sega, but I think both of them would work, and I think Xbox wants to work with Sega. I'm curious when Gene says that he doesn't think Sega would work, but Sega doesn't have
He said Sega does work.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I'm curious about that. So I would go with Square. As somebody in the chat goes, you guys only want this to go through for the social media interaction you have. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, I mean, that
would be instant fun.
I love it.
I mean, it would give me something to do while we waited for those games to actually come to Xbox. No, I'm just kidding. But I think Square would be big. You have to remember that there are.
If you love mayhem and chaos, then yes, you would want.
It's perfect for Gaz.
Yeah.
But you have to remember there are almost as many playable Final Fantasy games right now on the Xbox Series consoles as there are on the PlayStation because of back compat, but there's a lot of Final Fantasy games that never came to Xbox. So, and I think we were talking earlier about Square and Game Pass, and I think they haven't they partnered with wasn't there a set of, I mean, they brought a bunch of Final Fantasy games to Game Pass, I thought, in 2019 or so? I don't remember, but I thought they've kind of been looking Xbox's way, not ignoring them. So Square's my pick.
I think Square, it makes more sense. What does Sega have? Yeah, obviously Sonic, but what does Sega have? Sega always gets mentioned because of its synergy, and I think it would be the name, even though it's quite old, it still has Sega and the Xbox Dreamcast. That would be the next Xbox. I would call it that. That would be epic.
Oh my
Can you
god, that would be
imagine?
so fucking sick if it's just the Xbox Dreamcast.
Can you imagine? That's the name. I just name
I don't
it
even
Xbox
need exclusives. I'll
Dreamcast.
just buy it just for the fucking name. That's it.
Yeah. I would even
Nobody under
melt-
40 would, but sure.
That's so true. I would buy it. I would buy it straight. Xbox game Dreamcast would be amazing. Even bring the little curly whatever it's called logo and incorporate stuff out. What do you think, Asa? Sega or Square? And what do you think generally of this whole thing about them being on the
Personal interest for me, way more interested in Sega than Square Enix. Like I said, I don't feel that Square Enix can do very much with the Final Fantasy IP. They've obviously, since these conversations came up, they've got rid of the Western studios that also held a lot of value. So the ones that I did respect, the Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, they're not part of it anymore. Square Enix would feel a lot more vindictive as well, because they have a lot of synergy with PlayStation and with Nintendo, and almost none with Microsoft. So it would be a bit of a nasty deal to strike. The social media fallout you're right, it would be entertaining for a little while. He asked what I think, so I'm going to tell you the other thing I think as well. So the court documents, they came out saying like studios and developers that Microsoft had considered, and there was like 100 different developers, and I think for the console space, and another 70 to 80 for getting into the mobile space. So all around me, I'm seeing on Twitter people being like, I mentioned that one, I'm brilliant, look at me, the best. I was like, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. So I'm just going to get that out of my system. And that's not at you, Huggy. Square Enix and Sega are poignant. They're good ones to mention if they're what you've been calling. But just everything was like, stop it, you're boring. There's a clip that I showed on my Thursday show from The Simpsons of Bart Simpson with a saucepan on his head going, oh, I'm so great. And that's like, this is what I see on Twitter. Like, Sega, we've always said there's a massive synergy there. Like Gene was saying, so, like Microsoft did most of the systems and the online connectivity of the Dreamcast. They were very much in bed with Sega for like before Xbox was a thing, and they continued that legacy with the Xbox. There's lots of rumors around the Peter Moore. Yeah, Peter Moore as well. Yeah, there were lots of rumors around the launch of the Series X that Sega might publish that console in Japan to try and get it some foothold there. So that it will be the Sega Series X over there, and obviously never panned out and was probably a nothing rumor, but there's always been this talk of Microsoft and Sega working together and doing things going forwards. And like you say, Sega came out and said like they like Microsoft. They feel that they've got potentially a stronger relationship with Microsoft than they have with Nintendo and Sony. Like they're getting along really well, but they're not looking to get acquired at the moment. So they've got this like project super massive world beating game in the works, and they're gonna wait until that flops and then they'll get acquired.
You joke, but really that cuts the incentive. Like time goes quick, man, and you just need an incentive to be bought. Microsoft could buy them. It's quite interesting with that, that email that we saw, because while that is definitely on the cards, that when Phil Spencer sends out this email, acknowledges the fact that it's a publicly traded Japanese company and there may be some problems, it's still attainable. So that's incredible. And the fact that we'll talk about what happens if this deal doesn't go through, and we're about to come to that as we're nearing the end. But let's read these super chats. Jax82 with a $5 super chat, thank you. He goes, if the ABK deal doesn't go through, what happens to those 10-year agreements? They flop. That's it. There's no agreement. The agreements are void, because by virtue of the fact that there are no position to even offer them. So forgive me for getting this wrong. Jofo Loco of 78 Inc. US Gaming. That's a long name. Thank you for the $10 super chat, man, because I think Microsoft should still pursue Square and Sega after closing ABK. If it does close. I think that would put Microsoft back in the 360 era of gaming, making those acquisitions. I think Jofo Loco is right. I don't think we'll see the end of acquisitions after ABK, by the way, and I think they need to tackle Japan, and I think Sega's or Square will tackle that. It will make it harder, but it won't make it impossible. A lot of people think that after ABK everything's going to be done. The reason why ABK they're struggling so much is because of cloud, and really that's the whole cloud argument. But there are other angles on this. I've got Faisal, shout out to you, man. Thank you for the £10 super chat. Goes, first, Gene, it's great to see you. I don't know you personally, but I wish many years of health and wealth. I hear Square Enix account on Twitter unfollowed Xbox and Nintendo. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe they did. It wouldn't surprise me. Square are pretty freaking vindictive themselves, or pretty sour and salty at times. Thank you, Faisal. Huggy with the $5 super chat. Sega has Persona, which is huge. Yakuza, Phantasy Star Online, and many more. Yeah, Yakuza's pretty big as well. Sega Persona's pretty big. Phantasy Star Online.
Total War.
That's huge.
War. That's on the PC side, RTS. Microsoft is though interested in the mobile element of it. Does that scratch that itch? Maybe. maybe Sonic in some degree.
They've cited in their documents that Sega have a strong presence in mobile. I don't know it because I don't play mobile games. There's probably a Sonic Endless Runner game or something like that that's doing
the
all
Sonic
right.
Endless Runner game is actually pretty popular. I don't know if it's like, you know, it's not like blowing records or anything like that, but like it's done well, and it's also a really good game. I played it, so.
Okay, all right, okay. Robbie NH with the £5 super chat. The shout out to you, Robbie. You go, Sega saying not now, i.e. get ABK done, then we'll talk. That's exactly what it
says that they bought Rovio too. Yeah, but yeah.
Rovio, oh yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Sarah Bond's Sega tweet on the M4 surely is a sign of things coming in the Japanese market finally. Robbie, I'm with you. I think there's a lot more to it. And time, give it time. It's there. Rambling Entertained, thank you. Sorry.
I just want to magnify that, like Hargeet pointed it out before I had a chance to say it, that they've partnered with Sega on a bunch of games. They got those Persona games. They've partnered with marketing for Phantasy Star Online. They've been doing far more with Sega than anyone else in the questionable area of what we're thinking they may acquire. And the hints have been there. And when you see Sarah Bond put out that tweet, like, what does she write? Like, oh, London. And I was like, oh, shopping. Like, come on.
It's obvious. It was so obvious what she was doing. And it's amazing. Like, and it's compound all of that with the disclosure with Sega coming out and saying, we have the best relationship with Microsoft.
Right. I talked to Sarah in LA before FanFest, and she said that like whenever I tweet something, everyone's like looking to see what the secret meaning is behind it. And she said there was one time where she tweeted something where it had no secret meaning. It was the Fellowship thing, the Lord of the Rings reference, but everything else, I think, when she's tweeting, like it's for a reason or it's for someone. And when she put out the tweet about this with the Sega building, where there's literally nothing else in that shot, and while you were talking about it, I went and looked at that on Google Maps, and behind it is the Kia building, you know. But you see Sega prominently in the picture, like. If that's something they've been talking about for a while, it's on the shopping list. They're trying to get their fans ready and get some secret synergy. Like, I think there was a reason for that picture. So I don't think it's a conspiracy theory to think that.
Yeah, the reason is that she's after Phil Spencer's job. She's trying to one up his shelves.
She's doing a good job. Hey, man. Sarah Bond was so good at that meeting, at the hearing, that really kind of gave me a lot of confidence in her. And also, by the way, before that picture of the M4, she was in Chinatown, and I spent a lot of time in Chinatown, so I know basically every thing there. I'm just thinking, okay, well, there are some Japanese restaurants there. It's a whole like strip of restaurants. That's also not a coincidence. Why? I think there's a lot there. Just Far East Asia, the focus is there, and things are going to happen. Watch this space. This is not just us like rubbing your testicles. There are things happening, and Microsoft is doing some movements there. Rambling Entertained, thank you for being a member for a month. Because stop holding the line for the corporation that needs to buy third-party exclusivity to fight against the corporation that made it by buying exclusivity. I agree with you, Rambling.
We've already said that, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Rambling, for that. Huggy Channy with a $10 super chat. Square put the first AAA game day and date on Game Pass. Outriders. Octopath 1 is on Xbox. Came out on Game Pass. Still not on PlayStation. Still not on PlayStation, he says. But almost all the Final Fantasy games on Game Pass lent their studios to Xbox to make Xbox games. Wait, which one is that? They lent their studios to make Xbox games. Which one's he talking about there?
Not sure on that, but the rest of it though, like there's definite evidence that Square Enix and Microsoft were getting along a little better back in those days when this was speculated upon. So who knows if an approach was made and then things went sour, because they're definitely not getting along so well now.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I don't know. Crystal Dynamics. Oh yeah.
Crystal Dynamics. I know that they're working with them now. I don't know Square Enix. They might have done.
I think Square did allow them. Yeah, Square made that decision. I remember now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting there. So it's not all like animosity. It's just feel like Square feels like Japanese Bobby Kotick a little bit, like very methodical, very like who buys us out. Like Bobby Kotick, I know people came at him for all this touching up people and stuff, which is fair enough. But just as a business mind, it's just like, yeah, get rid of him. Shabs with the £2 super chat. Oh, I forgot to mention Kupo. What the you and your Kupo. Final Fantasy reference. Ace, I like it. Outrageous.
Have you met them now, Gaz? Like last week you didn't know what they were. Have you met the Moogles now? So they're not in Final Fantasy 16. Moogles. Gene, are Moogles in Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, they are. There is at least one in 16 for sure.
Okay. I'm not interested in that.
Fantu Sarcher. Thank you for the $5 super chat. I fear if the ABK deal fails, Microsoft won't be able to go after anyone else because the regulators will have the power to control markets as they see fit. That is a very pessimistic view of the world. But there's
do you have on the listing of stuff to talk about what happens what can Xbox buy or can't buy
if this fails? Topic. That's literally the last topic, and we're coming to it right now. Well, it's laced with what happens with the deal.
Laced.
Fatu, you are right. Like, if the FTC gets its injunction, that will give a lot of credibility wrongly to the FTC, in my opinion, because they've been a shit show under Lena Khan. So I think it will be an absolutely diabolical thing that they get rewarded by that. But whether or not that gives regulators power to control markets, I don't think so, because it will be assessed by the judge in this case. Well, I forgot her name. Sarah? What was her name? She handled it brilliantly, and it'll be assessed on its merits. But I do think it should pass. Peter Morland, shout out to you, man. Thank you for 17 months. A pleasure to meet Gene, he says. Sits well along the side of my 3 favorite presenters. For the avoidance of doubt, it isn't bullshit. Yes, I am telling the truth. It's right. You do meld in with us. All the chat of testicles and nipples, you are fitting in well.
Gaz, this is a kid's show.
No, it's not. It never has been.
I did see someone in chat is like, I didn't expect Gene to be the crazy one, and it's like, I do say some off-the-wall stuff sometimes too. So.
Hey, Gene, you were here when freaking Fritanga, Colt, and it's Alex were on, so that says it all. And you were there for
I'm not allowed to cuss on Twitter, though. I'm not allowed to say fuck on Twitter. I've actually gotten in trouble for saying fuck on Twitter. Like,
shit!
Really?
They will call me into the principal's office, like the literal office, and they'll be like, Gene, it says here on June 17th that you said fuck. Like, I'm sorry, you know.
Jeez.
It fucking sucks.
Can you not do F like with the?
I can do that, which is so weird, which is so stupid.
It's weird. It's a weird thing. Weird policy. But final topic, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the big one. This one way or the other. In this week, we are going to get masses of sodium from one camp or the other. There's only really 2 camps that really care about this. This Xbox camp and the PlayStation camp. Let's be real. And this is it. The judgment will decide whether or not ABK goes through. Before we go into future strats and what we have to talk about, Gene. What if you're gonna be a betting man? Who would your money be on, FTC or Microsoft?
I would still bet that the deal would go through.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that it would make sense. If logic rules, I don't think it makes any sense that it doesn't.
And that's where the problem lies in your statement, Gene. If logic rules, because it very rarely does.
It very rarely does. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
If it doesn't go through, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. It's not a monopoly. It's not. It's just not. We're not even close to that point yet.
Absolutely. This is the whole monopoly chat is absolute bollocks. There's no way on earth. Even would it affect the market? I was on Kayasanti, shout out to him, his show earlier today, and they were talking about the figure, how much it would affect Sony if all CODs, including past CODs, was just ripped off the system. It would just shift the market maybe at most 5% in favor of Xbox. It's so negligible. But you think the deals go through? But Colt Eastwood, you've been very, very pessimistic about it. You don't think it will go through? Why? What's your view on it? You don't think it'll go through?
Yeah, I believe that it's not worth it for the FTC and the government to allow the deal to go through because they're uncertain about the future. And I think it's just easier to block the deal by putting forward the preliminary injunction and then just be done with it instead of letting them run free with all the money. And I think what's happened over the past week is it's been presented that Microsoft and Xbox should be able to do this and it doesn't harm competition, but I think that little bit of reason of doubt and Xbox coming in guilty first, according to how they frame this, I think the easy decision is to block the deal, and that Xbox will have to pay that $3 billion fee, and then they won't be able to buy anything big to make up for what they can't get today. That's what I feel like is going to happen, because Gene says if you look at logic, and I've been around long enough to know that the way things work logically does not work for the underdog, which is Xbox. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work out in their favor. People don't care. They don't see the way that Xbox kind of goes on a side road and says, look, this is what we're going to do. They've been presented a case where Xbox will provide the ultimate value proposition. The only negative that I can come up with ABK being signed for Xbox is that Xbox will make more money. That's it. Because the status quo is Call of Duty will be multi-platform forever. WoW, Diablo, Overwatch, multi-plat forever.
Wow,
and
Diablo, Overwatch. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. If there ever was going to be an Overwatch 3, which there probably won't, it would be multi-plat. The next Diablo game, what, in 10 years? It won't even matter. And if Infinity Ward is going to make a new IP or make a new game, would that be exclusive? Maybe. Is it going to be as big as Call of Duty? No way. So there is nothing. Everything that Xbox brings to the table, they say, look, we want to buy these huge studios just so we can make Game Pass. And what is Game Pass? It is the most value forward gaming service or gaming platform on the planet. You pay $15 a month and you get access to hundreds of games anywhere you want to play within the ecosystem. PC, mobile, handheld, Xbox console, cloud, your mom's laptop, you name it. Nobody else offers that kind of value. And I don't think the regulators understand that. And they've tried to worry about cloud. They're not worried about cloud. They're wondering about cloud. I think in the end, and I'll sit down, they're just going to say, you know what, let's just block it. That's where I think we are. And if you're an Xbox fan, you lose nothing. All of those games made by Activision, Blizzard, and King are all still available to you as an Xbox customer. Nothing has been lost other than, wow, I get Call of Duty for almost no money every year. Like, that's a really cool thing. We'll lose out on that most of all. Do you think I'm a doomer?
You are a doomer. I don't agree. I think the deal is more than just COD on Game Pass. I believe what Phil Spencer said, that they want to revisit older IPs. They want to make COD biannual or not an annual affair, so that will make Call of Duty better as well, because the studios are not on this tremendous pressure every year to release COD. I can see World of Warcraft
you're making a mistake.
Blizzard.
You're making a terrible mistake. You're going by what he said publicly rather than what's been said in internal emails and documents. And they've said in internal emails and documents that they're not changing anything at Activision.
Is that what he said? I don't know. Did he say that? They're not changing
anything. Yeah, they're going to carry on working as they are. They're not changing anything in terms of what Activision are developing and how their studios are structured and all the rest of it. Activision will continue to run as they are, pretty much independently of Xbox, with their games going to Game Pass. Yeah. So all of this stuff that they said publicly about revisiting old IPs and changing the release cadence of Call of Duty, that's stuff that's been said that you probably shouldn't take at face value, because it might not happen like that at all. They just say things.
Well, I would publicly and loudly rebuke them incessantly until I was like a cis in freaking Phil Spencer's back, because that bullshit does not fly. Otherwise, I don't care. Like, no, they need to do that. They can't get away with all this public posturing and wanking us off, and then just in the meantime.
What does Xbox stand to gain by forcing, or what does Xbox stand to gain, Gaz, to encourage those studios to not invest in Call of Duty where they make their most money guaranteed? Like, it's a money printing machine. And if you want to say, hey, we've got these studios, you work for us now, let's diversify and make more games. And they're like, we don't really, some people don't really like going out on a limb and losing a bunch of money. And Xbox doesn't either. I don't know why they would be motivated to go out and like bring Blur back or Prototype. I don't.
Blur, hell yeah, Prototype.
I would love that. I would love it.
I called to say all my favorite words, dude.
I know. I love
Blur.
Guess and I've made videos on this. Like, there's these great IPs they've made over the past 15 years that are completely dormant, and I don't even know if they're money makers anymore. And I know it sounds like I'm being super pessimistic and negative, but I'm trying to get ahead of the reality of where the suit and ties are thinking, look, where's the money come from? Which trajectory is it going to? And that's where we're going to follow. And I know us as fans, we want Blur to come back. We want Prototype 3. We want them to re-grab the license for Transformers and make the Cybertron games. And like, it would be amazing. It would be amazing. But I think the people, like, they zip up their tie, they cinch up their tie, and they're like, that's not really where the money is anymore. That was 2010, and I hate that.
Shut the up, Cole. Listen, you guys, internal emails are all wank. We know Microsoft is so reactive to the public outcry and noise. They will fucking do it. Long-term strategy. If you have any modicum of any intelligence, you don't just do a Jim Ryan black and white, here it is, this makes us money. You want to build the brand. You want to build an identity. An identity for Microsoft involves looking into those old IPs.
I agree.
No, you don't have your Spider-Man. You don't have
Going
that
back
kind
to
of
the nurturing aspect of nurturing these IPs, having multi-generational IPs like Zelda and Mario, basically.
Exactly. Long term, you want to do that. Long term, you want to retain your staff. Your staff are fucking burnt out, building COD all the time. You've seen the internal discourse between the Blizzard Blizzard people shitting on Bobby Kotick for Overwatch. They're like, they kept making us working on Overwatch and Overwatch 2, which is disgracefully Overwatch 1. All of that. You cannot be blind as a leader and have such a hardcore look on financials. Microsoft know this, man. Like, we have seen, why does Rare even exist? Why does Sea of Thieves even exist? Because Microsoft understands the value in allowing studios, some studios, and not just Microsoft, every other, so even Sony, even Nintendo. Look at Nintendo's games. You think that they had such a hard rule they can come out and create some of these beautifully diverse, incredibly creative games? Microsoft is finally learning the value of understanding creativity. And creativity requires having an outfit of people, like-minded people. You want to foster an environment where talent is everything. Why did Sony?
If you could make whatever you wanted,
convince yourself.
I'm not. Telling you.
If you could make whatever you want, Gaz, if you could make whatever you want on your platform, then Sony Bend would be making Days Gone 2, but PlayStation won't allow them to. And that's a sad story. Because they want to continue making what now they're being relegated to make other people's games or become a support studio, or and they want to expand upon Days Gone, which is, I think, is a really good game. So I agree with you, Gaz. I have that same passion. I'm just trying to tell you, the reality portion of it is I don't think the suits and the leadership are going to do that.
You guys are too pessimistic. You guys are jaded. Look, I get the reality of it. But I think Sarah Bond, invite me to anything because you're so cool. But invite me to dinner, and
executives aren't our friends except Sarah Bond. She's
yeah.
All right. Well, Gene, what do you think? What do you think Activision Blizzard and King are going to do moving forward if they were acquired by Xbox? What would change?
Fuck the status quo.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it feels like Xbox is still trying to figure out, like, between their hands-on and hands-off strategy. To Gaz's point, if you do look at Nintendo, and I'm bringing this up because I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a series that doesn't sell well. You know, Part 2 only sold like 2 million, but Nintendo still lets them make that game. They made an entire trilogy over the last 12 years by selling only a couple, like less than 5 million each. You know. And that's been nice for them, you know? So optimistically, right, it would be great if Xbox, again, to Gaz's point, understands that creativity needs to be nurtured, needs to be nourished. You can't just brute force your way into people's hearts. You can brute force your way into the industry, but you can't brute force your way into people's hearts and minds.
Deep. There you go. There it is. You see. This is Colin Moriarty. That's the kind of quote you should come out with. You can't brute force your way into people's hearts.
That sounds like a good new Xbox IP. Deep Force.
Deep Force 9.
That's the next game from the Callisto Protocol studio.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like Callisto Protocol. I don't know why people hated that. But
I think one thing Colin did mention. I finally got to listen to his podcast and what he said. He did mention about the politics of this whole case, right? Lina Khan, the chairwoman of FTC, is a Democrat, and she was appointed by Biden. And the liberal and the leftist, because if you remember, Bernie Sanders also came out
against it.
Right? Yeah. So the liberal and the leftist, then to be clear, these are separate political views, but they both are anti
consolidation merger. Yeah.
And Lina Khan is an expert in open markets, so it behooves her to be skeptical of this and to appear skeptical of big corporations.
Yeah.
So if there's anything, it would be interesting to see if the FTC. Well, I mean, like that's what they're putting forward. It's not their decision to make. But that's what they're trying to put forward, that they're anti-big corporation. They're like, look at us. We are going against the big money. Microsoft, which is when you compare by Microsoft to Sony, Microsoft is a bigger company still. So.
Yeah, comparatively, there's a massive giant. Yeah, FTC have said they don't give a shit if they lose, and then after this, they're going after what is it? What's that big case?
Amazon.
Straight off the bat, Amazon. Like they've
got an ongoing thing with Apple as well, I think. Yeah.
And then there's loads of them to be distracted about. They're not going to put all their energy on this. So despite their manifesto, after this is done, they're already looking at that one, and they're just not that great. I'll be honest. Compared to CMA,
it's funny to me because
FTC.
Their ideological approach to stop these massive corporations.
It's so good.
Cyberpunk, Blade Runner, all of these things, they've told us that that's probably correct. Like in 10 years' time, you're going to have Microsoft's cyber-enhanced militia fighting on the streets with Amazon's drone army, and we're going to go, we probably Call of Duty on Game Pass might not have been worth all of this, but it'll be too late. So, but ideology doesn't matter through the legal system, right? So the approach that they're taking, whatever they believe, they have to find a case in law to say that this needs to be stopped for a valid reason. And I look at the court case going on over in the US, and I don't understand US law, but the whole court case, the way that it's presented and streamed and all the rest of it comes across a little bit circus, and people are ranting and raving about the way this judge is performing. But I'm watching an episode of Judge Judy with this judge trying to figure out the industry as she goes, no disrespect, she's doing well, I'm sure, but trying to figure out the industry and ask pertinent questions as it go along for this one person to make this massive decision. And I don't really see it playing out very well. The only reason that it might go through is you would think that a preliminary injunction, which is just a pause on the deal, should be a low bar to meet for the FTC. And it shouldn't, in theory, if you're going by written law, Microsoft coming out and saying, if you pause this, we're going to walk away from it, and Activision saying we're just going to drop it, that shouldn't have any influence on the decision to grant a preliminary injunction. It shouldn't.
But
no, because it's law, but it's also presented as a circus, and they're trying to sway the opinion of one person. So it's really difficult to call. I don't know which way it's going to go. I don't think Microsoft will entirely walk away from a preliminary injunction, but again, if Activision want to, then they want to. So it's really hard to see going through, because I just lack the understanding of what the questions are and what they need to prove. They should have centered the whole thing around the virtual reality market and whether or not Call of Duty will have a VR mission in 2025.
No one gives a fuck about.
How are you sitting on it, Asa, percentage-wise? I know you haven't dug into it like most people because it is super annoying. It could be boring, but what is your percentage of it goes or not? Where are you sitting?
It's I don't understand the American court system, so it's really difficult to call. So I just look for references from people that know more than me. I look at what Hoglaw is saying, because he knows more than me, and he's saying don't take it as more than 50-50.
Yeah,
you're kind of feeling
ignore the circus of it, ignore the questions. It could go either way. So I'll go with whatever percentage someone more clever than me says.
Yeah,
What
Asa's
about
also right that the American legal system is kind of a circus. Like, look at how many fucking shows we have about lawyers and judges and courts. Like you mentioned, Judge
So
Judy. We have so many fucking TV shows about lawyers and judges and courts.
Yeah.
More than like Japan has Phoenix Wright. That's it.
We've got Suits. We've got what's it called? Ali McBeal. Oh, Ali McBeal.
Oh,
What happened to her?
Most shows are either cop shows or law shows.
Jury,
That's pretty much what.
Judy. There's so many judge shows.
What's
America's a bit of shit,
what can't Xbox buy? Like, if they have to pay this $3 billion, there's a cap on what they're even allowed to.
No, I don't think there's any cap. This idea that Microsoft is precluded from buying, and okay, look, before we get into what, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Let me read these super chats. Alvin thinks the deal will go through. Thank you for the $5 super chat. $5. He goes, the deal will go through because it's 100% up to the lifetime appointment of Judge Corley. No jury, no legislative vote, no reason for pessimism. But Alvin, the bar for a PI, a preliminary injunction, is much lower. She's not making a determination of whether or not the deal should go through. That's all it is an injunction. That's a low bar. That's where the 50-50 comes in, man. And Asa, when Asa says that, it shouldn't really factor into your decision. But it's going to be very hard if you're the judge. And they've expertly said that this $70 billion deal will tank if you allow this injunction. So it's going to be hard.
It's funny because there's a parallel in the UK, because in the UK's courts, the competition, whatever it is, CAT, Authority Tribunal, they're also recognizing that it is time sensitive, and they're like, not allowing for any delays. It's expediency. They're doing it quickly, but you don't feel that it's going to have the same sway because they are just going to go what the law says, and I don't get that impression in the US. So
yeah, you don't get. I told before the show, like the FTC is just a shit show. The way they've dealt with it, the US is known for that in terms of litigation. It's just just like a clown show for that, which might suit Xbox fans. Yeah, Huggy Channy with the $5 super chat. What the mix of games worked on at ABK would be decided by the head of ABK. If Kotick is replaced, Phil decides who that is. Just saying. Also facts. Phil would decide what games are worked on, and Phil has a gamer's hat on. You'll have to make a case to the higher ups and Satya and whatever. But
he has a Hexen shirt on.
He had a Hexen shirt. Hexen, bruh.
Yeah, I was the reporter who brought up Hexen, so I was so happy to see that. Cause I was like,
really?
Yeah, because I interviewed Phil right after the ABK deal was announced, and I was like, "Are you gonna bring back Hexen?" He was like, "Oh yeah, oh fuck, I love Hexen." So that's why when I saw the shit, I was like, fuck yeah, Phil.
Yeah, oh
you
shit.
Remember
there
us.
you go. Oh, see, you guys made fun of me for my dream, said I was naive, and it's all gonna be status quo. But I believe in Spencer. I'm holding the line. Chris with a £2 super chat. They should bring back Singularity. Yes, they should. Huggy Chatty with a $2 super chat. Bringing King General David energy. Actually, hold the line. Yes, just said that. You're holding the line. And if we see this deal fails and collapses this week, the pony stables rain a fiery hot shit on us, and we just sit there and go, ha! But then we have to think about the future, because the game is not over. Listen, ponies, do you know for a fact we're gonna position ourselves to talk about what's next on the table, because the battle's only just begun. Microsoft has deep pockets.
Just before we move on to like next potential acquisitions and like backup plans and whatever, I don't actually know, Gene, like, do you think this is a good thing for the industry? Do you want this deal to go through, or would you rather it was blocked?
I have no opinion
make me
on
hate
that.
you.
I have no real opinion on that. And job wise, I should have no opinion on it, right? But also personally, if I'm going to be honest, I actually don't have an opinion on it. It's fine. It's fine either way. It wouldn't bother me. If I was an Xbox fan, and I am, it still wouldn't bother me. Because we'll probably talk about it next. But I mean, there's still a lot to look forward to in the Xbox field, So
exactly, and Sega. But yeah, COD was a shock to all of us. that they went for ABK. Like, that wasn't even on the cards for anyone. Talking about, remember acquisition season, and they got delayed and never heard anything. Call of Duty, ABK came out of nowhere. I was like, what? COD? That's fucking ridiculous. If the deal fails and it was too big, what does Microsoft do, Colt Eastwood? You are being pessimistic. You think they're not even going to make a big publisher play, yeah or no? What do you think?
Well, typically what I like to do is I like to predict something so I can get it wrong. Yeah, people say, I don't trust you because you liked a game and it turned out being bad. And I'm like, okay, all right, so the deal's getting blocked. There you go. I am preparing myself because, like I told you, this deal does nothing for me. And I will. Gene's like, I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm sure he's probably thinking, what does it do for me if it passes? As a fan,
either. We're really,
Yeah, and I don't want to speak. I'm just gonna pretend like I'm just saying this. As a fan, what does it do for you? And we talked to some of our friends who are big fans of Blizzard games, and you still have access to them. So your question is, I've been pessimistic about it. I just feel like it's a big move, and I'll just repeat, I don't think the government and the regulators understand Xbox's value proposition, and because I think Phil just needs to sit down and say, look, we just want to make more money, and we're going to keep the status quo. We're going to get a ton of money from owning this company, and we want to use that money to make games on Game Pass, PC, and Xbox console. Now, does that harm consumers? And the judge should say, no, it doesn't. Okay, and we'll be going now. That's why I think it really should go forward, and I'm fairly confident it will, but too many times Murphy's Law has just kicked Xbox right in the nuts.
So you're basically saying no, it won't go through simply because you're trying to maintain some kind of spiritual force, send out the negative so it comes back positive. A
little bit. I'm sure someone can say that I'm pony botting or that I'm dooming and glooming, but I'm trying to stay realistic to how things can go left, and they have. Remember the day before the CMA was going to say, all right, go ahead, I was talking to someone very, very, very in the know and said, yeah, they're probably just going to pass that. No, Gaz, who I was talking to. I was talking to someone, and they were like, so they're going to do this tomorrow, and that's going to be done probably tonight, because it was in the UK, it was early in the day. So tonight it's probably going to go through over at the CMA, and then we're going to go on to the EU, and then we'll be well on our way. And then the very next morning, when I got up in North America, CMA has blocked it, and so I'm like, none of us saw that coming. So that's kind of where I'm sitting, and I really hope that I've even told my audience, I have a video with 100,000 views where I said Xbox should just drop this ABK thing and channel that money into studios that could just make exclusive content for them and for Game Pass. And people don't agree with that.
Third-party public partnerships or buy studios?
My thing was drop ABK. It's not worth it. You've wasted 2 years. You've postured yourself to look like a victim. Take a portion of that $70 billion and go buy big studios like Capcom, Sega, Square, and
Capcom.
I'd love
Capcom.
Yeah.
More than anyone, Capcom. I don't think it'll ever happen.
Or invest into projects like what they're doing with Kojima, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. I know that they want to have studios make games for them. They want to buy a couple studios. They want an Eastern European foothold. They want a Japanese foothold. When I say foothold, I mean they want to have a place. They want to have a place in Eastern Europe with Techland. They want something like we'll say Sega, and they want. They have a foothold in UK and North America, and they just want to have studios everywhere that are making a diverse lineup of games like PlayStation does, and I think that's better suited for their energy. So if ABK gets blocked here in the next week or so, I would hope that they would want to use some of that money to go get into those markets instead of, as Gaz and I joked the other day, use that money to just invest in AI for Bing. Right.
You say that the money that people think that the 70 billion that Microsoft had put aside for this
Yeah, it's not.
That will still be in the tank, and then Microsoft will spend it on something equivalent in gaming. Don't think that money's going to go back in the pool, and it might go. I think the next. Remember Metaverse? Even Phil Spencer says I don't even hear the word Metaverse anymore.
Right.
It might be they'll spend that money somewhere else, like maybe.
And
AI,
we've heard that
maybe
investors. I don't know how true it is. We've heard some Microsoft investors would rather them drop this and use that money in other investments that would pay off immediately instead of being through litigation. And I don't know how true that is, but I would think people might feel that way, that because you don't care where the money is going. If you're investing, you're caring if it's turning around and cranking out ROI as soon as possible. And if you're sitting in court over and over and over and it appeals, and yeah, it's not a good thing.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Gene? The deal fails. Microsoft has fucked it up. FTC's messed it up. What would you do if it was Microsoft? What do you think they would do?
I wouldn't, like I said earlier, I would invest into projects that would be kind of exclusive. Look, Final Fantasy 16's end credits. This is not a spoiler. The end credits have fucking Jim Ryan's name on it, you know?
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it just says right there at like halfway through the credits, President and CEO of Sony Interactive, Jim Ryan.
Can't hold a controller.
Yeah.
That's why we made this game so easy.
Yes!
Oh my god, that's perfect. Yeah. So I would love to see Xbox lending their resources to fund interesting, creative, and possibly exclusive projects. You know, it'd be cool to see a Phil Spencer by like you know, in the end credits of like, you know, a Metal Gear game or what. Well, obviously, no, Metal Gear game is never going to happen, but like, you know, we're probably going to see that with whatever Kojima is cooking up with for Microsoft, you know. And I would like to see them do more of that, which is again harkening back to the 360 days, right?
Thank you.
And it would also help them.
Thank you.
Again, establish, and once again going back to the theme of nurturing, you know, new IP, establishing these great relationships, these great business relationships, and yeah, and we'll just have a whole host of new games. But otherwise, the showcase, the recent show, I'm still riding on the high of the recent showcase, which is really great, you know. And we got Starfield coming out later this year, you know. So like what is even if this whole thing falls apart, we're still gonna get, if it all goes through, if the game holds up well, we're still gonna get a generation defining game on the platform, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's something to still be excited about, regardless of what happens, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ultimately, this ABK chat has been so mired on this big deal that a lot of people not even play COD. Let's focus on the games, and ultimately Xbox is looking very bright without ABK. Remember, we had ZeniMax. There's a $7 billion deal with a whole suite of things.
And I do take, you know, and I know Spencer has said this publicly, and you know, like Phil just kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth, as we clearly know by now after the emails. But I do believe when he says that the ABK acquisition is quote unquote an accelerant to their strategy and not the whole strategy itself.
Yes.
I think that still holds very true. That you don't really need them to do that. It would obviously be a huge boon to what their strategy is, but you know, they're still going forward with it, and I still think that it's an interesting strategy to do, you know.
Absolutely, and thanks for reminding us about that Phil Spencer a few weeks before this hearing did say that look, this isn't an instrumental part. Like, we are still invested in gaming, but this is an accelerant, because you can't deny this scale of deal. Microsoft will be invested heavily, which is why I want to see it go through. But the focus may be on mobile and stuff.
Well, remember the listing, Gaz, of what studios they want to acquire and why and how many people and what they bring to the table.
Yeah.
Like ABK offered them the mobile, a hold in mobile in the market, and then it helps them with their PC integration, and then the rest is just revenue. And Gene's absolutely right. It's an accelerant to get them on mobile and PC with more of that support, and then it's just a money-making crank that just goes over and over every year due to some of those big IPs that are multi-platform, and then that money turns around and goes back into their first-party studios they already have, and maybe other things they want to buy. And they're not just going to go buy something to kill PlayStation. They go and if they're looking at Sega, there's a checklist of things that are going to fill out the holes that Xbox doesn't have. And PlayStation right now has some holes that they need to fill. They need some serious service games. They need some live games that last longer than just the 20 to 40 hours. They need some great shooters, which they don't have. And they've got Bungie now. Like, they're filling those holes. And this is the bad thing about we worry about the consolidation, but what?
Jim Ryan's filling holes.
Language.
And for that, he made it into the credits of Final Fantasy 16.
Oh, that's fucked up.
I mean, the consolidation is pretty minor when you step back and look at all the, 500 studios that are making the games we play every couple of years. And ABK and these other studios, and PlayStation's not done buying things. They're just rounding out their things. And I guess you just can't play on one device. Otherwise you miss out.
Yeah. I mean, well, everyone's filling the gaps in some way, shape, or form. And Microsoft will continue doing that. Asa, do you think after this deal is done, Microsoft has an appetite for onward acquisitions? Or are you more of a proponent of these strategic partnerships, timed exclusivity, money, the Sony strategy almost? What do you think?
It's a matter of perspective. For me, I'd rather they pump loads of money into things that I'm personally excited by. And that's not going to be their strategy. It's not what the Activision Blizzard King deal is all about. So for me, it's weird actually, because Blizzard, of all the developers of all games ever across my lifetime, I've spent more time, invested more hours into Blizzard games than any other developer, by a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved their games for many, 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 many years, but I don't care about them now. I don't care about what they're doing at the moment. I've not really fallen in love with Diablo 4. I don't like Overwatch 2. World of Warcraft is a shit show. World of Warcraft has been on sale this last week, and I was really tempted. The Dragon, whatever it is, Dragonflight expansion. I got an email again reminding me, it's on the summer sale. You could pick it up if you want. And I was like, oh, I could give that a go. And then I read the email and it said, we've got a sale on Dragonflight expansion and services and cosmetics. And I was like, fuck off straight away. I'm not buying your expansion, subscribing to your service, and looking for discounts on cosmetics. You can shove that right up your ass. This company is dead to me. So from my perspective, the deal going through, it can't make things worse as far as Activision Blizzard King go. I don't know that it will make it better. No one's really going to know if it's a good deal until 10 years have passed and we can really see the impact that it's had and how they've been managed and handled. But in terms of what Microsoft do next, I would like to think, I've always said, the most exciting thing that Microsoft can deliver is they can use who they are. They can use the fact that they're Microsoft and they've got this massive cloud infrastructure, and they can strike deals like they have with Kojima and the cloud native team that they've built to do that. They can pump money into there and they can make things that we've never seen before. That interests me personally. But what interests Microsoft at the moment is expanding into the mobile space, expanding into territories where they don't have a presence, filling the holes, as Colt said. So they're going to try again, and if it doesn't work, they'll shut everything down. I don't know.
That's a good point. And I actually really like your point about the fact that Microsoft should leverage its strength in a way that differentiates them from the competition.
This is the positive.
Cloud.
I always say that I'm skeptical of what they're going to do in terms of how they monetize things and what the industry looks like if they become this Disney and they control all the content. I don't know that that's good for us. I don't know that it's bad for us, but I'm skeptical. But as Microsoft, they are uniquely positioned to deliver games that we've never seen before. If you want to play the next Elder Scrolls and you want your companion to have intelligent conversation with you because they're using AI to actually have fluent dialogue, that would come from Microsoft. That's the position that they're in, the power that they could leverage.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see from them, but that's well off topic than what I'm talking about.
Definitely want to see them. That aligns with everything I like about Microsoft's value in it. And I was thinking as far back as last gen, but AI, I'm a bit of a nerd for that. AI and strides in gaming, cloud gaming tech, offloading that technologies, that power on locally somewhere in the cloud. We saw it with Microsoft Flight Sim. I really hope they don't lose that vision. I think there will be some synergy there. They're making big inroads in AI. I think that will fundamentally transform a lot of our gaming experiences, AI conversations that we have in game. People are doing it already with ChatGPT, building up these like expansions on Skyrim. I've seen a mod there where they kind of loops back to ChatGPT and it gets like context sensitive, like it identifies. It's incredible. They were seeing it. That's those strides there, and I think it's unavoidable. But I want Microsoft. And that Kojima partnership may allude to something like that. So, yeah, we will see a lot more of that. So, Xbox fans, if you need a little bit, if you're feeling a little bit down, all I will say is there's no real reason to, because Microsoft's still in the game, and it will be doing something more. So now acquisition season will be back, the flavor of the month, and we'll talk about speculative stuff about Microsoft. How quickly will they mobilize to attack their competition? One thing I will say, this console war it's getting hotter and hotter. The animosity is getting stronger and stronger between the companies publicly, between the fans, and I fucking love it. It's such a
Wouldn't you rather live
moment.
in Satya Nadella's utopia where there are no exclusives?
Oh, that's one point when he said that. I was so glad you freaking follically challenged. How dare you say shit like that? Exclusives don't matter. I'm so glad.
He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
He said, "Oh, so Sony have been doing it. This is the bullshit that came from Microsoft. Satya Nadella doesn't like exclusivity. He'd get rid of it if he could. He won't be. Luckily, he's not in the driving seat behind that. Yeah. So shut your.
That's not what he said. He said that he doesn't like a world where you buy exclusivity to keep away from other consoles. So he's talking about what PlayStation pays other studios to keep their games away from Xbox, which Xbox also does some of the same things, but they're buying the studios and they're owning them. But I don't know. Yeah, Xbox's third-party exclusives are all timed, aren't they? I mean, they haven't had a third-party exclusive since the Xbox One era with like Rise and Quantum Break and stuff like that.
He said some shit. He said if it was up to him, there wouldn't be any exclusives. That's what basically he said. Well,
I mean, I could look it up, but yeah,
Okay, you know what? I will find the quote. Just before we are about to end it, I will say, Dead Planet, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Goes, Colin Moriarty still thinks Doom and Elder Scrolls 6 could be multiplat. Colin also said, watch this space. Starfield is going to be exclusive. How the flip did that pan out for him? Yeah. And Selfish Burrito with a €6 super chat. Thank you, man. He goes, Final Fantasy 16 running at 720p, and the PS5 has an 8K logo on the box. Can't make this shit up. Oh, he said didn't say shit, but I'll add that for him. That was a bad look. That was a bad look.
It would need to quiet any kind of criticism about Starfield. It would need to, because there's no point. This is a vastly smaller game. This is one of the smallest AAA games. That I love the game, but it's a very, very small game that isn't doing a whole lot, and it can't hold that.
It's a cinematic game. It's not doing anything technically ridiculous.
Yeah,
a lot of it could run on PS4.
Yeah.
Which one?
Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, it could definitely run on a PS4. Like all these games are incredible. Everything we've seen come out would run on a last generation console that would actually be playable on there. Are you ready for Satya's quote? Because it's about holding your games to just a console. Here it is.
What is it?
If it was up to me, I would love to get rid of the entire exclusives on consoles, but that's not for me to define, especially as a low share player in the console market. The dominant player there, Sony, has defined market competition using exclusives, so that's the world we live in. I have no love for that word. I take that as he's meaning putting your game on one device, and that's all you can. You have to buy PlayStation 5, or you can't play Final Fantasy 16. You cannot play it on PC. You can't play it on mobile. You can't play it on Rogue Ally. I think that's what he means.
Exclusives.
I think that makes sense for the Microsoft CEO to say that, because like it's Microsoft. Microsoft is on every platform, and they want to be everywhere. So I think that's still well within the spirit of what Microsoft, the kind of company Microsoft is, and the kind of company that they continue to want to be.
Yeah. Someone in chat was Brian E says, I think Satya was given talking points. I think all of that basically might be coaching to suggest.
Oh, for sure. I mean, obviously. I mean, like you don't take the stand anywhere as a CEO or executive without being coached extensively by media trainers, by lawyers. Like these are all talking points, and that's why these people repeat the same things over and over again, because they say, "Oh, I didn't practice this, so I'm just going to say the same thing over again."
Yep, they do. Yeah. They really do.
That's literally it.
I've worked with communicators and
back to Asa's observation that this is all theatrics, because it is. These are actors.
Satya's job in that quote, his job is to posture Microsoft as being all-encompassing, inclusive, and great for the consumer by allowing their games to be bought on the devices you want, as long as you buy them from Microsoft or Xbox. And he's saying PlayStation doesn't allow that, and they absolutely do not. You want to play Final Fantasy 16, you have to buy a PS5 or already own one, and that's not. I've never said, I hate it when people say that exclusives are anti-consumer. They're not anti-consumer and they're not anti-competitive, but you do have to buy a PS5 to play that game. And that's the only place you can play it until they decide otherwise. And Xbox is and Satya's posing this comment because they cannot catch up to PS5's console numbers, because they don't only sell on an Xbox console. They always sell their games on a PC. And throughout much of the 20 years, I would say 70+% of their major flagship games are on PC at some point. Yeah. So they have done this for a long time. They just started doing it in force in 2016.
Yeah, it's not a debate within Microsoft. Oh, should we put this on PC or not? That's just not a conversation that's had.
Correct.
It's always automatically it's going to happen,
But there was some conflicting stuff where Phil Spencer said that Bethesda's games wouldn't appear on, but they never made the decision on exclusivity. But turned out that he did. I don't have that article here, but there was maybe Ace is right. Maybe it's all bullshit. But ultimately, I've observed Microsoft. And particularly after FTC, if this deal fails, I think there'll be a lot of animosity. I think the fans will demand it. The fans will the fans are asking for more aggression. If ABK tanks, that'll be interesting as well. Because either way, we win as gamers, because the industry needs this bitter competition and animosity. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an epic show. We've gone way past almost 3 hours, but it was FTC chat, and it was interesting, and we're going to find out next week, I think, what happens. All this ABK chat. Well, if it does the PI does get rejected, then we'll still see that question continue, actually, because we still have to fashion a win. We have to see a win, or we have to observe Microsoft somehow navigate the waters with the CMA. Which is a massive question mark around it. But ultimately, one way or the other, I think we'll get an answer, because the FTC decided the deal is going through, in my opinion. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a good time. Please hit that like button. Smash that like button. And before we say goodbye, we have to say some things. Like, gents, sorry, I've lost it. Colt Eastwood was like back at XNC all over again. I hope you had a good time, bro. Tell the people where you're going to be a doomer and gloomer.
I also want to end that by saying I do think it's going to go through, and I think it's going to be okay. I'm just trying to be pessimistic enough to be prepared for when I uninstall Twitter for about 7 days.
I'll be the front lines. I don't care.
And just to prove that I can be... Just to prove that I can be as much of a clown as possible, that if it does go through, I will be intolerable and you will all hate me. No, I'm just kidding. We'll have a good time.
No, he's not.
I think.
You know what, Cole? If it doesn't go through, Elon's got you covered. You'll only need to see 600 people being mean to you. Then it'll be rate limited.
I'm so glad we didn't discuss that in the show, but
any of that crap. What the fuck?
What the fuck is that?
It broke like right before the show went up, but he's limiting how much traffic is. He was bragging like a few months ago about how much traffic they still had, even though he took over, and now he's limiting the traffic. So you can find me on Colt Eastwood, the channel, and I'm going to be on Fonz's show tomorrow, and then I'll do my show on Monday and maybe make a video about all this nonsense. But we'll be listening to the FTC hearings like crack addicts. We'll just be like, oh yeah. But I don't know. It is enjoyable to listen to, kind of get a behind the scenes look into how they really feel about this. So yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Gene. It's an honor to hang out with you and talk the business and talk the fun of gaming. Thank you so much for having me on.
Likewise.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on. And yeah, we'll find out. It's going to be entertaining. Don't you dare uninstall Twitter. It will be fun. Last but certainly lastly, Gene, it was an absolute pleasure having you on, man. I hope you had a good time. And you swam in the sauce with us. I hope you loved it.
I loved it. I had a grand time. Like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of all you guys. You guys are wildly entertaining. So it's really fun to just chop it up with y'all. If you all want to find me, I'm Gene Park in most platforms. Twitter, I guess. I'm gonna hawk my Instagram. You can follow me, Gene Park, there on Instagram. And I am also a Colin Moriarty affiliate. We have a Nintendo podcast called Punching Up. Colin's on the show. So if you really don't like Colin, he's not on the show. It's just me.
Oh, that's good. I'll watch it then.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's called Punching Up. It's on Last Stand Media. So give us a follow and like there too.
Oh, cool. I'm so glad. I was actually being pretty civil against Colin this show. I didn't know you were affiliated with it. I was going to literally violently shit on him.
Look, Colin doesn't need me to defend him, and trust me, I've had a lot of people try to make me defend him. So
fair enough, man. Oh, thank you so much, both of you gents, man. It has been an absolute pleasure, and the time flew for me, man. That's really good. Asa, before we sign out, anything to tell the peoples?
Oh, not a whole bunch. Thanks ever so much to Gene and Colt. There's people in chat, you can probably see them there, demanding that you come back sometime, Gene. I know you're going to be very busy, but you'd be very welcome for sure. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah. Honestly, if you guys want me back, just let me know, and we can figure out a time, because it's fun.
There you go. Chat secured. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, Gaz, what are you up to?
Nothing, man. I just got a lot of shit. Oh, the source video. I'm just like, should I wait till the hearing? I actually got an idea. I'll spend all of tomorrow, I think, making a source video. But that's what I'm doing. I'll watch Final Fantasy 16 to its conclusion, and I'll play a little bit of everything else. I'm playing Fallout 4, which is fantastic. So I'm going to play that game because it actually has gameplay. But you'll see me on Twitter taking a shit on everyone. Hopefully a lot more content on this channel. Please like, share, subscribe, and hopefully see you very soon. I think that's the outro. Thank you, all the mods.